Jaw-dropping, I know.
Welcome to this Qiyana Ultimate Guide. I am Zeus, and after testing plenty of items and runes from the best pro and solo queue players, I've put as much information in this guide to help you emulate their builds and gameplay. This guide contains everything you need to achieve your goal this season with Qiyana. Whether you're a newer player aiming to get out of Iron 4 or grinding to get Diamond for the first time. The abilities section will quickly cover what her abilities do, then after each ability, I'll show you tips and tricks with ranked gameplay footage to give you an advantage right now. The build section contains all the best items, runes, and unique interactions with Qiyana. It even includes 2 full cheat sheets so you can use in your game right now with all details displayed on screen. The combo section will show you how to perform all simple and harder combos. There'll be animations on screen so it's easy to follow along, a slow-mo version, and then some gameplay footage using those combos. The mechanics section will go deep into Qiyana's unique kit, covering special interactions with each of her ability and how to use them so you can have the edge over your opponent. Gameplay section contains strategies to play Qiyana at every single stage of the game, including tips on laning phase, options to consider whether you're ahead or behind, and team fighting strategies. Matchups include over 40 different mid-champs, which includes information on how to counter these champs, item purchases, power spikes, and special interactions you can abuse to give you an advantage. In strengths and weaknesses, we'll look over why you want to play Qiyana over other champs, her weaknesses, which I'll cover solutions to combat, and I'll even discuss some strategies in champ select. I'll also include information for 2 other roles, top lane and jungle. And finally, right at the end, for those who really enjoy these guides and want to support me and this channel, I'll mention options there. With YouTube's new timestamp feature, you can quickly find the information you're looking for by scrolling through the timeline, or simply scroll down in the description where you'll find a full list of timestamps and more information. Many players recognize Qiyana to be one of the harder champions, and considering how many special interactions she has, it can be a little overwhelming on first glance. Therefore, I'm going to carefully explain everything you need to know, including plenty of in-game examples to give you an advantage. She has a crazy amount of burst, a tricky and deceiving playstyle, and a massive shockwave ultimate that can literally change entire games. I'm 100% confident that if you watch this entire guide right until the end and constantly practice everything mentioned in this video, you will climb and you will reach your goal in ranked. So remember to save this video to a playlist or bookmark it so you can come back to certain parts whenever it's convenient for you. Or if you really like, watch it all in one go. If you find this guide helpful at any time, be sure to give it a like.
How proud you are of your abilities.
In this section, I'm going to quickly cover what her abilities do, and right after each ability, I will show you tips and strategies to give you an advantage with footage from ranked gameplay. Some of these tips aren't even covered on the league's official site or the very detailed wiki site. Even if you may know what the abilities do, you'll still want to watch all of this section because of the tips and tricks. Qiyana's abilities are quite unique, so if you don't understand something straight away, they'll become clearer as you keep watching. Her passive, Royal Privilege, deals bonus physical damage to enemies whenever Qiyana basic attacks or uses a damaging ability. This effect can't occur on the same target more than once every 25 seconds. However, this can be reset on all targets when you gather or change element, which includes her W ability, and I'll go over that later on. Since it applies to minions, it's great for last hitting and clearing waves. You'll be able to tell when you've applied this to minions with a circle around the target that includes the countdown timer. The 4 colors include the 3 elements and 1 to represent no element. This passive plays an important role when trying to deal optimal damage, whether it's winning short trades or when you need to one-shot an enemy, so I'll show you how to take advantage of this in the combos section. Her Q has 2 parts. The first part, Edge of Ixtal, Qiyana swings her weapon in front of her, dealing 75% reduced damage to targets beyond the first. You will rarely want to be in this form, as she won't gain any special effects until you activate the second part. First, let's cover her W, then I'll return to fully explain the second part of this ability. Her W Terra Shape also has two parts. An active, which allows Qiyana to dash towards a target location, gathering one of three different elements: brush, river, and terrain. Each of these have a special effect, which I'll explain shortly in the second part of Q. You must target an element in order to activate this ability. This active resets her Q cooldown. We'll cover this important mechanic in the combo section. As mentioned earlier, using this active resets her passive whenever Qiyana changes element. You can check which element you'll gather by looking at the cursor, though you will need to activate the normal cast to see it. I would still recommend to use quick cast because it is faster, but if you want to practice in order to learn the ranges, go ahead, or even use a different key binding to switch between normal cast when you need it. The cursor will be green for brush, blue for river, and orange for walls. You want to be confident with these ranges as it will be hard to check during important fights and situations. You can use this dash over most smaller to medium walls, so it's perfect to catch an enemy or get away. I'll cover examples in certain areas in combos, specifically the mechanics section. Not only should you be using this to pick up elements and gap close towards enemies, but it's a reliable way to dodge skill shots. You can remain in place and pick up an element without dashing by simply using it on top of your character model, as long as there is an element nearby. When you revive after dying, you will automatically be holding the terrain element. The second part of W is a passive. While Qiyana is holding an element, she gains bonus attack speed, extra 25 range on her autos, her basic attacks and basic abilities deal magic damage, and she gains out of combat movement speed whenever she's close to the element she's currently holding. The movement speed is great for getting to lane faster. Make sure to gather the terrain element and walk as close to walls and other terrain like towers, the nexus, and inhibs to gain this buff. I would even advise to spam the dash 2 to 4 times to lane depending on your cooldown to cover slightly more distance since it has quite a low mana cost. If you decide to roam towards top or bot, use the river element. There are still patches of grass and lots of walls, so the other two elements should suffice. If you are scouting or fighting in and around the jungle, the brush element will probably be best to activate movement speed. However, the terrain element might just be as good since there's still plenty of walls. You pretty much always want to have an element at all times. Terrains created by champions, for example an Anivia wall, will not count as an element. All these extra buffs are important for trades, so I'll explain how to optimize these in combos. The extra AP works on towers and other structures, so use it to take them faster when you can. Now that we've covered her W, I'll explain the second part of her Q, Elemental Wrath. In order to upgrade into Elemental Wrath, you need to use W to obtain an element. When you use Q while holding an element, Qiyana will consume the element and throw her blade in front of her. Basically, once you use Q, you will lose the element you are holding. This enhanced Q has a longer range than the default Q, unless it hits an enemy within the first half of its range. It will also grant a special effect depending on the element you're holding. When you use W on any brush, you'll obtain the Wild Enchantment, sometimes referred to as the brush or grass element, which creates a grassy stealth area for 3.5 seconds, granting Qiyana invisibility and bonus movement speed until she attacks or exits the area. This is by far the best element for outplays. It has potential to juke, bait, stall, dodge skill shots, avoid auto attacks, move around the map with the bonus movement speed, and scare enemies to stay away by becoming an unseen threat. If the enemy uses a control ward, it will not grant them vision of you. However, if they are using a sweeping lens, they will have a delayed shimmering hitbox of your location. Just for clarity, you can still be hit by AoE abilities. You can use it to check brushes and areas where you lack vision, using the invisibility and movement speed to keep you safe. You can use W while invisible without interrupting it. I will thoroughly cover this element in the mechanics section of this guide, so stay tuned for that if you want to see the amazing potential this one ability has. When you use W anywhere in the river, you'll obtain the Ice Enchantment, sometimes referred to as the river or water element, which roots the target for half a second, followed by a slow for 1 second. The root and slow has many uses. For example, it's great whenever you're receiving a gank, allowing your jungler to close distance and help you or them land any other skill shots. This will be important to start some combos, which I'll explain in depth later in this guide. Finally, when you use W on terrain like walls, towers, and inhibs, you'll obtain the rock enchantment, sometimes referred to as the wall, earth, or terrain element, which deals bonus damage to enemies below half of their maximum HP. This should be mostly used as a finisher. Remember, if they're above 50 HP, this almost has no use. It works on minions, making it great for wave clear, and it works on neutral monsters, so use it to help your team secure dragons and barons, or even go for the game-changing execute steal. Her E, Audacity, allows Qiyana to dash a fixed distance towards any targeted unit, dealing physical damage. Using Q during this ability will aim the Q at the champion target. The Q will still act as a skill shot, but it will be much harder for the enemy to dodge. Audacity only damages targets if within 250 range at the end of the dash. Basically, if you were to dash to an enemy and they moved out of range from where you ended up, they wouldn't take any damage. Also, if you interrupt E with W or flash before reaching the target, it won't apply the damage. I'll cover interaction in combos to actually cancel the E animation and still deal optimal damage. The EQ combo only applies to champions. If you use EQ on other targets, it will simply aim Q towards your mouse cursor. E can be used on neutral and enemy units, not ally units. Camps around the jungle make it great to escape as well as chase down an enemy. I'll show you some important wall jumps for E in the mechanics section of this guide. And finally, her ultimate, Supreme Display of Talent, sends out a shockwave that knocks back enemies and detonates whatever element she hits with it, stunning and damaging nearby enemies. To clarify, the shockwave will activate around brushes, rivers, as well as the edges around terrain. It stuns enemies between 1 and half a second. The closer they are from the initial impact, the longer they'll be stunned. This is truly a game-changing ability, giving Qiyana the potential to damage and stun the entire enemy team. Even if you're behind, this ability alone can carry a teamfight. Use it around tight areas in the jungle. The jungle has plenty of terrain and brushes, so you'll have a much greater chance of stunning and damaging enemies even if you miss your initial knockback. Other key areas include the dragon and baron pits, most of the river area, and even around structures like towers. This activates when it passes through any of the elements, so it's amazing in the river as you can easily proc the stun and damage. Since you push them away, however, it might be harder to follow up with damage, depending on how far away they are from you. I'll cover in combos how to make up for this distance. You can use this ability on champion made terrain, like Anivia or Azir Wall, giving her advantage in certain matchups. More info in the mechanics and champion matchups sections. This has a very high AD scaling and deals 10% of the target's maximum HP. The initial part of the Wind Blast only needs to be within close reach of elements to trigger it. It's important to get a feeling for the distance you need, so you won't have to rely on being too close to trigger the effects. It will provide vision around the entire wall it connects with, so utilize this when necessary, especially around objective focused areas. Unlike other knockbacks in the game, it will not send enemies over walls, even the thinner ones. For clarity, it works on towers and inhibs that have already been destroyed. Ability order. Her Q is her most important skill for damage, wave clear, and element effects, so max this ability first. Her E has solid AD scaling and reduces in cooldown, so you want to max this second. Leveling her W doesn't reduce the cooldown, nor does it significantly increase the buffs past the first level, so it's best to max this last. Even though you do max W last, you still want to take it at level 2 and sometimes at level 1. We'll cover those conditions in the gameplay section. And just for clarity, you want to level your ultimate whenever you can, which is at level 6, 11, and 16. Enjoying this guide so far? Make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon and turn on notifications so you can be one of the first to know when a new guide is uploaded.
I love your little weapons.
This section includes 2 full cheat sheets that you can use in your game right now. Simply pause the video on the cheat sheet and you'll have all the details you need. In terms of major runes, there is one clear winner that both pros and high tier solo queue players prefer, and that's Electrocute. The only other viable runes, some just barely viable, include Dark Harvest, Predator, and Conqueror, and I'll quickly cover these after Electrocute. The important choices will be determined by the minor runes and item purchases you pick for each game, so I'll mention special interactions and specific situations to help you make the most effective choice. Let's cover the most popular and optimal build for Qiyana, Electrocute. Hitting a champion with 3 separate auto attacks and abilities will deal extra damage. This rune synergizes perfectly with her trading and all-in burst playstyle. You will literally chunk up to 80% of a champion's health with a full combo, including the damage from a passive and this rune. For all simple and harder ability combinations, check out the combo section of this guide. Ignite will be your main summoner spell in most games. Not only does it synergize with your assassin and burst playstyle, it will count as a proc for Electrocute. The first minor rune is Sudden Impact, which will activate extra lethality when you use W or E, increasing the damage from autos and abilities. You could take Taste of Blood for extra sustain in lane if you're willing to sacrifice damage. Eyeball Collection is the default best option simply for the damage it provides from takedowns. Zombie Ward is also viable, and the extra wards around the map will help with your team's vision control. This synergizes well with Umbral Glaive as it reveals enemy wards as well as Sweeping Lens. Finally, Ravenous Hunter as the third rune for the sustain it provides from the ability damage you deal. Relentless Hunter is a viable option when you want to prioritize roaming. Ultimate Hunter doesn't seem as optimal, but if you plan to constantly force 1v2s, skirmishes or teamfights, this will be useful. As for the second page, the most popular and optimal set is Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic from Inspiration. These 2 minor runes provide sustain, ensuring you're able to heal from poke and use abilities to pick up low HP CS. You'll be pretty vulnerable, especially during the first 2 levels in most matchups, so take these 2 against medium to harder matchups. Check the matchup sections of this guide for specific champion lanes. Another set for your second page is Triumph and Coup de Grace from Precision. If sustain and surviving lane isn't a priority, pick up these 2 runes for the extra golden damage to lower HP targets from Coup de Grace and survivability in clutch fights from Triumph. Presence of Mind can be substituted in for Triumph. It's hard to say which is better, but I think Presence of Mind is slightly more consistent at the moment. You will sacrifice having a safer laning phase, so if you're ever unsure, I recommend taking Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic as your default from Inspiration. Corrupting Potion. This is a strong start for Qiyana. It provides HP sustain for most lanes where you'll be poked by enemy laners. The mana sustain will be necessary as you'll be using abilities to finish off any low HP minions. This will even provide a small damage buff when you go in for trades. On top of all this, whenever you go back to base, it will replenish all 3 stacks. A great cost-effective item that will be effective most of the game. Using this item will proc Time Warp Tonic, providing extra movement speed and a HP regen buff. Use this while in base to heal slightly faster when you've taken the Time Warp Tonic rune. Just make sure you have 3 stacks before you leave base. Longsword plus Refillable Potion. This is a risky start in most matchups. If you're confident your lane is easy, then this is the most cost-effective start and you'll be able to build a Serrated Dirk a lot quicker. Doran's Blade plus 1 health pot. I wouldn't really recommend this start, as it's even riskier than a Longsword plus Refillable, but you can always buy a Doran's Blade on your first back. Duskblade. The extra damage from the auto passive can be reset using your brush Q as long as you stay invis for at least 1 second. You can actually proc this passive up to 3 times with a 2 brush combo, and you can find information on that in the combo section. Edge of Night. You want to purchase this item anytime you are in danger from specific abilities, especially any hard CC that will put you in risk of getting one-shotted. You are squishy and you'll need to get close to be effective, so prioritize this as your second buy when necessary. Umbral Glaive. If you find yourself roaming through the river and jungle often, this may give you the edge you need as it reveals any wards. Even when they gain vision of you while you kill off wards, simply denying vision around the areas will create pressure around the map. The gold from destroying wards with 1 auto and control wards with 2 autos is a nice bonus. Youmuu's Ghostblade. This active is a great tool to catch enemies, allowing you to get close for optimal combos. This, coupled with mobility boots and your W movement passive, will be extremely effective to chase down almost any target, as well as cover distance around the map through roams. Sanguine Blade. This item is best for split pushing. The increased lethality and attack speed while one enemy is within your range of sight makes it strong for 1v1s. Purchase this anytime when split pushing is your priority or if you have very little chance of winning teamfights. It could be your one ticket to winning an almost lost game. Tiamat. In lanes where you are constantly being pushed under tower and need to counter push, this might be a good purchase. With a passive and active, you can push waves faster without burning through your mana. By pushing waves quickly, you'll be able to roam more. There are a few Tiamat combos, so check them out in the combo section of this guide. Black Cleaver. Great against armor heavy teams. A full combo with autos should get you to the maximum of 6 stacks from this item. Great if you want to get a bit tankier with the health it provides. Also, the movement speed passive lets you stick to your enemies. Death's Dance. An overall great item on Qiyana, providing sustainer survivability, however it's quite expensive. Get this if you're ahead and want a bit of safety. Executioner's Calling. A must-buy item against heavy healing teams. Last Whisper items. Any of the 2 Last Whisper items are great final purchases, but don't hesitate to purchase these earlier if the enemy team starts stacking armor. Mobility Boots. The out of combat movement speed is best used when you prioritize roaming, and although you buy this in most games, don't hesitate to buy Merc Treads, Ninja Tabis or any other boots if the conditions are right. It's a good idea to upgrade your trinket into Sweeping Lens whenever you feel the game has opened up, generally towards the end of laning phase and most of mid game, so vision denial becomes priority over warding yourself. Of course, there'll be some games where your support may not cover warding efficiently or you simply want extra vision, so keeping the ward trinket is fine. Umbral Glaive almost acts as a sweeping lens, so it will be up to you to decide whether you want to prioritize vision denial or help with supplying vision by using the ward trinket. Ignite is the preferred summoner spell in almost all cases. I will mention a special interaction with her E that Ignite can help with. Since Ignite gives vision anytime an enemy is ignited, you can follow up over any walls with your E dash, allowing you to stick to your targets without using your flash. This is a great time to mention how important control wards are on a champ like Qiyana. Not only do they provide vision control and safety for you and your team, anytime you find yourself chasing down or running from an enemy, a control ward can literally help you secure a kill or save your life. By placing a ward over a wall and providing vision, you can use E on an enemy or a neutral monster camp. This is especially useful when your W is on cooldown or you need to jump over a thicker wall. Now let's quickly go over 3 other builds that have some situations where they can work. This last rune is quite unique and will require a slight change in playstyle as Qiyana, and that's Conqueror. It has recently fallen out of favor since Conqueror now needs 12 stacks before you can utilize the max stack damage and the 15% healing bonus from your damage. This rune is best played top as it favors slightly longer trades, which is more common to melee matchups. You want to abuse your brush Q as much as possible, becoming untargetable and stalling time for your cooldowns. With 3 brushes and an alcove to perform jukes, top lane is perfect for this playstyle, so it's important to practice brush Q mechanics. I've added certain mechanics in the combo section of this guide, and if you want more information on top lane, check it out in the other roles section. Early items are flexible between Black Cleaver, Duskblade, and Tiamat. Again, I want to reiterate that Electrocute is currently the best rune, and you should rarely use this page. I'll update the comments anytime this comes back as a solid rune choice. Dark Harvest can be substituted for Electrocute using the build we already covered. It's a rune that stacks and scales well by dealing extra damage to enemies below 50% HP. The only problem is that it isn't consistent compared to Electrocute, and you'll have a hard time picking up stacks in laning phase against most matchups. However, if you ever have an easy matchup or an enemy team is full of squishies, this might just work, especially if the game goes into late game. So try this rune if you're confident in champ select. You'll find more success on this rune as a jungler, so check out the jungle section in other roles. Predator can be substituted for Electrocute in the previous build already covered. The movement speed active on your boots will create opportunities to roam and catch out enemies, while the bonus damage will help with your burst combos. You'll sacrifice lane pressure since you won't deal extra bonus damage compared to Electrocute and Dark Harvest. Only take this if movement speed is really necessary. Dark Harvest and Predator have greater potential if you choose to play Qiyana as a jungler, so check out the other roles section for more information. I would seriously recommend Electrocute build in 99% of games, but since this is an ultimate guide, these last 3 runes deserve to be mentioned, as you'll occasionally see some matches where some of these runes are used by Qiyana mains and pro players.
Look around! So many ways to kill you.
Qiyana has quite a few combos, animation cancels, and interactions. Try to learn most of the easy to medium combos and how to get optimal damage from her abilities so you're ready to adapt to your unique situation. Her passive damage is important for optimal damage, so keep this in mind when you're performing combos. You'll always want to start with an element that hasn't procced the damage from your passive. With most of these combos I'm going to talk about, you want to have your empowered Q ready. You should have your W off or almost off cooldown before you perform most of these combos. I do not expect you to learn every single interaction and combo off by heart the first time watching, but make sure to watch all of them so you understand what she is capable of. A good way to practice these is by mastering one of them at a time until you can perform it about 90% accurately, then come back to the video and try to master the next. After plenty of gameplay experience, the important combos and mechanics will eventually become muscle memory for you. Simple interactions. W then Q. Even though W has an animation, you can still throw out Q during its animation, essentially saving time. You will extend the range of Q, so it is useful to hit champs further away. This can also be used for faster combos, as you won't get any extra damage from auto attacks with your W passive. EQ. E then Q for almost guaranteed damage, since the skill shot will be automatically aimed towards the target. We covered this earlier on, and it's actually listed in the ability description in game, but I want to mention it here for clarity. Even though it is automatically aimed at the target, there is a very small chance the enemy can dodge this damage, especially if they have a huge dash like a LBW return or J4 flag dash, or they receive help from another champion like a Thresh Lantern. They can also flash behind a minion, causing the minion to half the range of your Q, ultimately not being able to reach your target. However, these are all very hard to pull off for the enemy, so this will always be one of the most consistent ways to deal damage. E then Ice Q. This is one of the most useful combos to CC an enemy, whether you want to follow up with more damage from your combos, or you want to set them up for your teammates. For example, when you receive a gank from your jungler, or you want to root an enemy so your ally Thresh or Blitz can secure an easy hook. E then Rock is one of the most reliable finishers you'll be using to finish off kills. E then Brush Q is probably the least effective, but it's still reliable damage. You'll simply be invisible as soon as you reach them. There is a slightly more juking potential when you EQ, as you'll have grass on both sides of the enemy. For example, using Brush Q by itself means there will only be brush in front of you, making it easier for the enemy to guess where you are initially if they have certain skill shots to aim. Q then Flash. This will extend the range or redirect it. Using Flash to gap close is great for finishing off enemies who are outside your Q range with the rock element, or perhaps you want to root an enemy further away with the ice element. It works on your default Q, but this will rarely be useful. You can add the WQ interaction from before and add Flash right after the Q. The combo would be W, Q, then Flash. This will close a little more distance. This is great to execute with Rock Q or root them with Ice Q from long range. E then W. You can interrupt the E dash at any point with W. Be aware that you won't get any damage from E if you interrupt it before you reach the enemy. This can be useful to perform an optimal combo close up, but you don't want to end up too far away from your enemy since you travel a fixed distance with your E. This can also be useful if you decide after you have pressed E that it isn't safe to go in for whatever reason, and you can simply dash back to safety with W. I don't think you should use this for most situations, but it's important to know it exists. W then E, and you can interrupt W with E. This can be useful in clutch situations where you need to quickly pick up an element with W, then instantly E towards the enemy. You can follow up with auto attacks and Q or the EQ combo. Or perhaps you are out of range with your E and you can use W to close that gap, then instantly E. A quick note is that you can cancel W or E with Flash. In extremely clutch situations, these could be useful. W Flash. W then instantly Flash to cancel the animation and instantly have the element you need. Perhaps this is useful if you have the preferred element away from the champion. You would W to the element, then Flash towards the champion. EF. E then instantly flash. This might be useful if you are close to an enemy but you want to deal damage from E. Using E close to an enemy means you'll end up away from the enemy, so you want to use flash to cancel the distance and stick to the enemy. Again, only really useful for extremely clutch situations. Important combos. Let's first go over important combos without your ultimate. The fast electrocute proc combo. E, auto attack, Q. This is a quick combo that procs electrocute. The auto attack is best before Q, as you'll gain extra damage from the W passive. Most of the time you'll be right next to the enemy, so it'll be easier to land Q. Another variation of this is EQ auto attack. The difference here is that your Q is pretty much guaranteed, but your auto attack will not get extra damage from the W passive. You will still easily proc electrocute. Main trade combo. Before you start, make sure you're holding an element. E, auto attack, Q, W, auto attack, Q. It's a good idea to end with either rock if they're below 50% HP, otherwise use ice Q to apply the root and slow to get away, or grass Q so you can use the stealth and movement speed to either get away or to get closer and dish out more damage. Depending on their health, you can follow up with auto attacks and ignite. Try to use the W not only to pick the best element, but also as a way to stay close to the enemy. Main trade combo without auto attacks. Here is the same combo without auto attacks. E, Q, W, Q. This is more effective against high mobility champs when you predict they'll simply dash away and you want to dish out as much damage as possible. Faster main combo. Q, E, W, Q. This is slightly faster than the previous combo, however the first Q won't be automatically aimed at the target. Use this when you are confident you won't miss the first Q. One word of caution with this combo. Since you can cancel your E with W, make sure the damage from E is activated before you press W. Basically, don't do this too fast if you are starting from max range or you'll lose the damage from E. I would only recommend this at very close range. Fast close combo. Q, W, Q, auto attack, E. There's a good chance you'll end up away from your enemy, so keep this in mind. The main root combo. You want to start this combo by making sure you have the ice element. E, Q, W, Q. This is really effective at locking down champs, even highly mobile ones. The initial root will hold the enemy in place, so not only is it the best way to set up if you're receiving a gank from your jungler, but you can follow up with a guaranteed second Q. Sometimes the enemy won't let you get in E range, therefore you'll need to sacrifice the E damage by using it on a minion towards the enemy, then aim your ice Q. Just to note, I didn't add any auto attacks in this combo as it's mainly used to set up for your jungler or to hit your second Q. However, you should always aim to include auto attacks before the final Q, especially against less mobile champions or if they have flash on cooldown. Also, if your jungler has plenty of damage, you could set them up and sacrifice your passive damage you gain by changing elements by throwing out a second ice Q, which would root the enemy for a total of about 1 second as well as slowing them. The safe distance trade poke combo. Q, W, Q. This combo won't proc electrocute, but you can get some decent damage from safe range. Most of the time it won't be enough to simply spam this combo the entire laning phase, as they'll likely heal over time and you'll lose significant amount of mana. To maximize mana, you want to aim this at the champion and minions for poke and wave clear respectively. This is a great finisher for enemies out of range, and you'll want to use the double rock elements for that. You can use this combo whenever you want to retreat as well. If you're being chased, Q towards the enemy, W over a wall or away from them, and instantly Q again, to perhaps finish off a low target and get away from the rest of the enemy team, or simply poke an enemy then escape. You can even finish this combo with an auto attack if the enemy is within range for the guaranteed electrocute proc. Ultimate interaction combos. Your ultimate has a short wind up time before the shockwave is released, so let's go over a few ways to increase its effectiveness. Ult then E. Use your ultimate then instantly E. You must be within E range or you risk missing your ultimate. This is effective because it allows less time for the enemy to get away, instantly CCing them, and you'll be positioned right on top of them to follow up with more damage. This is also useful if you decide to ult them into mostly the river and sometimes the brush. Since there's no wall to stop them, they'll be positioned further away from you, which can make it harder to follow up if you just use ult on its own. However, with the E in this combo, you'll be positioned right next to them to instantly follow up with more damage. A safer version. E then ult. You want to E then ult the second you start traveling. This is much safer than using ult then E, but it gives the enemy slightly more time to react, especially if they're a mobile champion. The sweep combo. We can use this safe version to create a sweeping combo. This is another reason why this combo might be slightly better than the ult E, because it can sweep and reposition your enemy. You want to E towards the enemy, then aim your ult wherever you want the enemy to land. You cannot sweep the enemy with the previous ult then E combo unless the enemy is already in the sweep range before your E. Your ultimate will activate at the end of E, so be careful using this when you are close to an enemy and want to sweep them at a 90-degree angle into a wall, as they'll be out of the sweep range. You can use this sweep mechanic with other combos, using this to start the engage. Ult flash combo. Ult then flash. Great to quickly gap close and surprise enemies, giving them less time to react. It's very effective for engaging or simply winning fights, especially when enemies are bunched up together. However, it relies on flash, which has a long cooldown. Use this for important kills and teamfights. It's also useful for sweeping enemies behind you. E ult then flash. E ult flash. Using your E to gap close off a minion or another champion, then ult flash. Great to not only gap close, but redirect your ultimate towards enemies at any angle you want. Think of a situation when a tanky champ is frontlining. However, all the squishies are too far from you. Using the tank as an E target, then ult and flash, hopefully targeting as many squishies as possible. You can use the E on minions or any other targets. Ult, flash, E. Great to close even more distance while leaving your enemies with little to no time to react. Again, you will have to be confident you'll be in E range or you risk missing ultimate. When it comes to these flash combos, you really want to save them for important kills or game-changing moments, as the high cooldown of flash isn't worth wasting. Main full combos. Now let's cover full combos that do optimal damage and include your ultimate. The next 5 combos require a wall to activate the shockwave on your ultimate. Ult against wall combos, no rivers or brushes nearby. Close range plus on wall. Ult, auto attack, Q, W, auto attack, E, Q. This is a full rotation of all your abilities, making use of your passives for ultimate damage and assumes enemies are already close to you. Start with ice or grass element. Once they are knocked up, you'll auto attack, then they'll be stunned, which gives you a guaranteed Q. Then use W to obtain a rock element while staying close and proceed with an auto attack, then finish with EQ for a guaranteed damaging gap closer, as most will try to run after the stun has run out. It's best to start with the grass or ice element and end with the rock element. You might be able to add another auto before you finish your EQ, especially if they have no escape. You can save your E until the very end if you feel like they'll get away, perhaps if they flash over a wall. This combo can be used on multiple targets. If you have 2 or more enemies bunched up, try to hit as many with your Qs when they're stunned against the wall, and you prioritize auto-attacking either the champ, which is most likely to die quicker, the bigger threat, or the closest. Gap close plus on wall. Ultimate, E, auto attack, Q, W, auto attack, Q. This combo assumes that the wall is directly behind the enemy. It allows you to gap close with E and instantly ult to give enemies as little time as possible to react. You can start with either the ice or grass element, as you won't need any of the effects, just the damage. Make sure to end with the rock Q. Add as many auto attacks before the final rock Q, but this depends on whether they can escape after the stun, in which case only one auto attack is best before your final Q. A safer sweep version. You'll simply use the E ult as we learned before instead. E, ult, auto attack, Q, W, auto attack, Q. With this safer version, it is way more flexible, as you can come from different angles with E and reposition your ultimate towards wherever the closest wall is located. The enemy has little more time to react compared to the previous ult. This sweep combo is the best way to full combo an enemy anytime they are over a wall and you have vision of them. Gap closer, root, and mobile. Start with the ice element. E, Q, ultimate, W, auto attack, Q. I found that starting Alt E and E Alt can leave time for some champs to dash or flash away, leaving you with your ultimate on cooldown. The reason this could be more effective compared to the other full combos is that some enemies will actually react and be able to flash or use any ability to escape from your E Alt or Alt E combos. However, if you EQ first, even if they do flash, the Q will most likely root them and you'll be able to follow up with the combo. Sometimes you may need to flash to reposition before the ult or aim your ult at a different wall, perhaps if they flash behind you. The worst case possible is the enemy gets away after you EQ, say a Thresh lanterns them to safety or they have a very large gap closer. At that point, you can just back off and save your ultimate cooldown. Basically, by starting EQ, it could potentially save you from wasting an ultimate. Another difference here is that you won't want to add any auto attacks before your ultimate. Same previous combo for immobile targets. You can start with E against an immobile champ, and here's the combo for that. Make sure you're holding the ice element, E, auto attack, Q, Alt, W, auto attack, Q. It's a much slower combo, but you won't have to commit to using ultimate until after you have hit the root. You'll use your E to gap close, get in one auto attack with your W passive at close range, then hit them with Ice Q. Once they are rooted and slowed, you should reposition and ult them towards the wall. If possible, try to add in as many auto attacks before the final Q. You can also brush first. With immobile champs, you can start with the brush element, perhaps if you don't have time to change elements, and you are confident you can land everything else. You can use the movement speed from the grassy trail to position better. Ult in the river and the brush. If you require a gap closer in the river and the brush, start with ice or grass element. Alt, E, auto attack, Q, W, auto attack, and finish with the rock Q. As mentioned in abilities, if you ult an enemy in the river or brush, they will be pushed away, making it harder to follow up with damage, especially auto attacks. With the initial E, you'll solve this problem by positioning within auto attack range of the target. For a safer version, as mentioned before, you can E ult instead of Alt E to start off this combo, even sweeping them behind you if you need. So the combo is E, ultimate, auto attack, Q, W, auto attack, rock Q. If the chance arises, be ready to ult multiple targets, preferably on just 2 if you're alone, but it can work with up to 5 depending on how fed you are, if your team is close, and the enemy team champions. Combos around the wall, river, and brush. Extra gap closer with a sweep. E, Q, W, ultimate, auto attack, Q. This could be slightly useful if you want to catch more enemy champions. The W dash will close extra distance, maybe catching a few more champions in your ultimate. This combo is best for teamfights when you have teammates to back you up, as it leaves you in a vulnerable position without cooldowns. The river is the best area to use this, however, tight areas in the jungle also work. Basically anywhere on the map you can use this ultimate effectively. Starting with grass element might be best if you need to lock down a champ. If damage isn't a priority, you could pick up grass element mid-combo, allowing you to be safe after this combo. Combo to counter instant escape or survivability, whether it's abilities or flash. This contains few to no auto attacks, so the chain CC keeps them locked. E, Ice Q, ultimate, W pick up ice again, auto attack, then Q. Some champs won't necessarily have an escape, but their abilities can help them survive. For example, a Lulu ult, where she gains health, or a Set W, where he gains a shield. If you CC lock them, they won't have enough time to activate these abilities and survive. You should only use this if your team is nearby for more reliable damage. This is pretty much the full main combo number 4, but you end up with Ice Q for extra 0.5 seconds of root. If you end up chaining them successfully, you'll get over 2.5 seconds of lockdown. This of course can vary depending on the enemy's tenacity. Fastest full rotation combo. Q, E, ultimate, W, Q, auto attack. Anytime you want to dish out the most amount of damage in the absolute quickest amount of time with your spell rotation, this is it. It's ideal when enemies are right in front of you. It can be done against the wall or in the river or brush. You need to be within E range. It contains 3 animation cancels as previously learnt, cancelling Q with E, then the E animation with W, and finally the W animation with Q. Be aware at max range E, if you cancel E animation with W too quickly, you won't get the damage from E.
Compared to other combos, you need to land your Q first and you'll miss some damage from your passive W auto attacks. Ending with Rock Q is best, but you can start with any other element, even no element. If you're wondering why you would need this combo, think of an extremely clutch moment where you need to quickly wipe out one squishy target but the entire enemy team is close by. Use this combo, wipe the enemy squishy out, then back out. Quick movement of your mouse cursor is important here, as you may sweep the enemy behind you with the ult, messing up your rhythm. Now I want to mention you can add flash combo interaction to any of the full main combos. This will increase the effectiveness to catch out enemies by surprise, close more distance, or hit more enemies in your ult. For example, we can take the ult flash interaction and add it to the extra gap closing combo. So the combo would be E, Q, W, ultimate, flash, auto attack, Q. The flash after the ultimate allowed me to close distance and sweep a few more enemies which I wouldn't have reached otherwise. Although the 10 main combos we've covered assumes you are attacking a single champion, they are still useful on 2 or more champions, so remember to aim Q on multiple enemies when possible. Add Ignite anytime you think it's best in any of these full main combos, either early on to reduce healing, at the end to finish them off, or use the vision it provides whenever you anticipate the enemy escaping into Fog of War. Double element combos. Let's mention combos where you want to use the same element twice. Although the last 2 of these won't be the best for damage output, they can be highly effective in certain situations, especially in teamwork plays. The double rock execute steal. Best to secure kills and objectives. Only use this once the target is below 50% HP and you haven't procced your passive yet with the rock element. Otherwise, it's best to use another element and then finish with rock. It's perfect if you don't want to get too close, yet you want to deal the most damage. This can be used with your main trade and full combos. Double river lockdown. Few things to mention. So after obtaining the ice element, if you're close, for example, in auto range, you can Q, river W, auto attack Q, since you have just enough time for an auto before they are released from your first route, then follow up with the second route. That's essentially 1 second of route in total, as both would chain CC for about half a second. Just for clarity, you never want to instantly double Q close up, as you'll waste the route duration since it does not stack. If it's an extended fight, you can Ice Q, allow the 1 second slow to end, then throw another Ice Q for a total of 1 second route and 2 seconds of slow. If you are at max distance, you want to Ice Q, W, and Ice Q to chain the route, as the Q skill shot takes time to travel. You can add ult for even more CC, which will be easy to land once you hit the first route. Go over the full main combo number 10 where we put this into use. This isn't ideal for high damage, but more of a stall tactic or making picks, allowing the rest of your team to follow up, since the enemy is CC'd for about 2.5 seconds in total, including the knockback and stun from your ultimate. The double brush stall. You can potentially stall and remain invisible for a total of 7 seconds, and if you reach 40% CDR from items and buffs, it will be back up in another second. If you juke and maneuver around brushes, you could literally be untargetable the whole time. Simple combos over wall. Is it best to start with W or E? These are simple combos I'll go over without the need for ultimate that are mainly used for situations where you want to finish off an enemy or they are low threat. Ideally, you want to start the next combos holding the ice element and ending with the rock Q. No vision over wall. Q, W, auto attack, E, Q. This is best if you don't have vision of an enemy behind a wall, but you are certain they are there. Because of the lack of vision, you won't be able to start with E. Throw Q in the area you think they are most likely to be around, and it's best you have ice or brush element. Then W over the wall and auto attack. If they're out of auto attack range, you'll need to E to gap close, so at this point, you'll want to EQ if they're mobile and get in one last auto attack. Otherwise, if you're confident you can stick to them, E, then auto attack, then Q. You want to end with rock Q and should aim for as many autos before you throw it out. Vision over both sides of walls. Q, W, auto, E, Q. When you have vision on both sides, or you just have plenty of vision in the area as possible, then you can use the same combo, only this time you'll know exactly where the enemy is and your first Q will be much easier to land. Sometimes the enemy will have vision of you over the wall, or they'll predict you'll throw a Q, so they'll start sidestepping. If you want to reliably land your first Q, then follow the next combo. Vision only on one side of the wall. E, Q, W, auto attack, Q. Since you'll only have vision of one side of the wall, you'll want to start with E. If they're immobile, you can E, auto attack, then Q for optimal damage, otherwise stick to the combo. I always consider the safest combo over a wall, as you'll guarantee the damage from your first Q. Another safe part about this combo is that you can reliably jump back over the wall with W if you're in sudden danger. For example, another enemy champion is suddenly in your field of vision. You can then just W over the wall and throw the final rock Q, having a chance to finish off the target enemy. This combo will also be the only option you have when it comes to thicker walls. Basically, walls you can E over, but you cannot W over. I'll cover wall jumps in the next section, mechanics for W and E. If you're holding brush or rock element and don't have time to change to ice, you can still use these combos against immobile champs. Against mobile champs, I would recommend once you've jumped over the wall to hold W or E until the enemy has used their escape ability, then continue with a specific combo. For example, if I E Q onto a Talon, but he E jumps over the same wall, I can then follow up with my E or W and continue the combo. One thing to take into account when using W over a wall is the element you're obtaining. If you're unsure what element you want next, simply E first, then consider what element you want depending on what happens. Another thing you'll want to add whenever you're next to a thin wall and the enemy is close enough is an auto attack. With the extra range from your W passive, you can auto attack, then continue with the previously mentioned wall combos. And I want to add one more thing, is that with some champion dash abilities, you can E the enemy mid dash, which will follow them over the wall anyway. This takes very good timing and anticipation, but it's important to mention. By the way, these are all flexible. I've tried to cover efficient ways to help you with common situations you'll come across. If I've mentioned a combo should be used on an immobile champ, but you have just seen a mobile champ like Zed use his W Shadow, he will no longer have a way to escape, therefore you can now consider him an immobile champ. Some specific advice for early game. Your W has a shorter cooldown, which is best earlier in a combo, as it'll be back up quicker than E. So if you do anticipate a long chase through walls in the jungle, start with W. Later on, when you've fully leveled up your E at level 13, both cooldowns will be almost the same. No auto ranged combo. Q, ultimate, W, Q. This is just enough to proc the electrocute rune, but you don't have to get close to auto. Great for areas you don't want to commit to, like under a tower or if there are more enemies nearby. First Q should be ice element to guarantee you land your ult. Finish with rock Q while they are stunned. You could start with the grass Q, as you would still do the same damage, but you may have less chance of landing your ult. Add ignite anytime for more ranged damage. Stall bait combo. Brush Q, wait until enemies are on you, then ultimate. There'll be times when you're caught out and you'll use brush Q to stay invis and stall. Wait for enemies to stack on top of you, since they'll be waiting until your grassy stealth area runs out. This will create a great opportunity to ultimate multiple enemies, allowing you to either escape or let your team capitalize and you can proceed with more combos. A special mention with auto attacks with Qiyana. Getting auto attacks while you have your W passive active is important for optimal damage, and it could mean the difference between securing a kill or having the enemy escape with 1 HP. That's why I've mentioned a few times to get in as many autos before you throw out your final Q. In some cases, you'll be able to auto attack long enough so that your W comes back off cooldown, and in this case, you want to double rock QWQ to finish them off. You can add this at the end of any combo. On the contrary, there will be clutch situations where you won't have time and you risk enemies escaping or perhaps risk dying yourself. This is when it's best to unload all your abilities and worry about the auto attacks after. Basically, if you ever feel like you're about to die, deal as much damage as possible by spamming all your abilities. A quick last tip with her W while mentioning combos. As we already know, the W resets Q. Although you gain no special effects when you aren't holding an element, your default Q will still do the same damage as the other elements, excluding the rock element below 50% HP. If you have to quickly deal the most damage possible but don't have time to set up an element with W and wait for the cooldown, simply substitute the default Q before any combos. Obviously some combos rely on element first, so keep that in mind. A simple example is the E, Q, W, auto attack Q combo. If you were to use W first just to obtain an element, you would basically lose damage from 1 Q. Get creative. These combos should serve as a foundation. Every situation is different, so be creative when it comes to your games. Here's an example. I want to sweep these champions into my team, but I'll put myself in a dangerous position, so I need a way to stay safe. Creative combo in River. Pick up a grass element, then proceed. E, ultimate, flash, Q. Using the E ult flash from the ult combos, I've used the tank as an E target, then knocked and sweeped enemies into my team. I then use Q on the backline for damage while staying safe in my grassy trail and being an unseen threat to the enemy backline. I could either grab another brush Q for more stealth or look to clean up the fight. This combo isn't optimal for damage, but it could ultimately be a game-winning play as it knocks enemies into my team, damages them if they're in the river, and leaves the enemy backline vulnerable as they're now positioned away from their front line. You can use this on any other terrain that activates your ult shockwave. I've just used the river for this example. A creative combo number 2, and if you don't have an E target in range, you could flash, E, ult, then Q. We'll get roughly the same effect, but we'll need flash to engage. Item combos. Tiamat. There are 2 main Tiamat combos. You can animation cancel W and right at the end of your E with the Tiamat active. W Tiamat. W Tiamat auto attack. Press W, then instantly Tiamat, then auto. The Tiamat active cancels the W animation, allowing you to get optimal damage and finish with an auto attack. The E Tiamat. E Tiamat auto attack. Press E, then instantly Tiamat, finishing with an auto attack. The end animation of E will be cancelled by the Tiamat active, allowing for quicker damage. It will also quickly proc electrocute. Caution with this. If you E at close range, you'll end up away from your enemy and you won't deal any Tiamat active damage. However, you can combine what we've learnt before with animation cancelling E with W. So you could E at close range, W, then instantly Tiamat. This will apply damage from E at close range, then use the W to cancel the rest of the E distance and instantly press Tiamat for damage. So the combo would be E, W, Tiamat auto attack. The Tiamat active does more damage the closer you are, so W makes it perfect to reposition right on top of the enemy. You want to practice the W and E Tiamat combos until they feel really smooth. Here are 3 example combos with Tiamat. You can start with the default ice or grass element. Optimal trade combo. Q, E, Tiamat, auto attack, W, auto attack, Q. You want to add in more auto attacks if possible before the final Q. Quick Tiamat combo. Q, E, Tiamat, W, Q. This is a really fast and smooth combo, dealing a lot of damage in a small amount of time, however, you sacrifice auto attack damage. Combo ult. Alt, E, Tiamat, auto, Q, W, auto attack, Q. Again, more auto attacks before the final Q if possible. You can E ult if you want to sweep an enemy or it feels safer. Ending with rock element is best for the finisher in most cases, so start with ice or grass element. And of course, if you anticipate they'll escape before the final Q, simply throw out rock Q, then auto attack if you can. Duskblade combos. The Duskblade passive damage resets whenever you are out of enemy vision for at least 1 second. This means you can potentially proc the Duskblade passive 3 times in a relatively short trade or an all-in. So a combo trade without ultimate would be obtain the grass element, E, auto attack, Q, W, picking up the grass element while you're invis, waiting at least 1 second, then auto attack, Q, waiting another second, and then auto attack. Obviously you won't get any damage from your passive from your second Q, as you'll be using the same element twice. You'll have to adapt to your situation. If your full rock element will do more damage as the finisher, rather than focusing on resetting the Duskblade passive the 3rd time. Most enemies won't just stick around for 1 second, so finishing with rock element is probably your best bet. Also want to mention that the Duskblade passive procs are slow, allowing you to land 2 almost guaranteed Qs on most enemies. This is a special mention for all the speed buffs Qiyana gains. These are key to engaging and starting your combos. At max speed, you'll combine speed buffs from mobility boots, Yumu's active, and the passive out of combat movement speed from being close to your gathered element. With these 3 buffs, you'll be one of the fastest champions on the Rift.
So basic.
I want to cover unique mechanics that are specific to Qiyana. This section contains what I think is valuable information to know in order to get the most out of her abilities and to adapt to the situation you're in. I was actually just going to add this to the end of combos, but soon realized that it deserved a section of its own. I'll cover mechanics for her abilities, plus other useful and surprisingly fun information. Again, I don't expect you to learn everything off by heart the first time watching, but make sure you watch it to the end so you see the possibilities and start visualizing ways to make plays. Let's start with the general mechanics of her Q. Some skill shots in the game will have a certain animation or sound when you hit enemies in Fog of War, specifically behind walls where you have no vision. Qiyana's Q does not have a specific animation or sound in Fog of War. However, in brushes or against very thin walls, if your Q only shoots out half the range, you've hit an enemy. Otherwise, it will show the full range animation. This isn't reliable in most cases, but it's useful to note. The Grass Element Q. Let's start by covering her Grass Element Q, specifically the invisibility mechanic. You want to abuse this mechanic against any auto attack or click target ability based champions, as they won't be able to output damage while you're in stealth. This is great when you want to go in for a trade using all your abilities, then retreat into the grass trail and buy time for your abilities to come off cooldown. During trades or fights around minions, use the invisibility to lose minion aggro, reducing the damage you take. Breaking stealth. Ignite, exhaust, teleport, and smite will break your stealth, so using these while you're invisible will reveal you and the grass trail will vanish. All other summoner spells won't break stealth. As for items, the Tiamat actives and its completed Hydra items will break the stealth. Yumu's Mercurial Scimitar, Predator Boots, QSS, and Stopwatch will not break the stealth. All consumables like potions, as well as wars and trinkets, won't break the stealth either. True Sight abilities. Here are a list of champion abilities that give the enemy true sight of you. Basically, it means even though you are stealth, when they use these abilities, they can literally see you and therefore target you. Reveal abilities. Here are some list of champion abilities that reveal your location. This means the enemy can accurately guess where you are, but they cannot target you. Basically, this is useful for enemies with AoE abilities, as they'll have a higher chance of landing them, not champions with auto attacks or any click target abilities. These are useful to know, but there is no need to learn these off by heart. Just come back to this part of the guide anytime you are up against a champ and you are unsure of their abilities. If Q hits within the first half of its range, it will only create half the grass field, so you have less space to utilize your stealth. Use your grass Q next to a brush and around a wall. This way, enemies are forced to check other sides of the wall and risk losing vision of you if they stay. Here is a common example near mid lane where you can use to juke. Q brush over this wall into the river. If it's an immobile enemy, they may go and flash over the wall. If they stay in the grassy patch, just W dash over the wall. You can even pick up the grass element again and repeat the same strategy. If there's two enemies, use the smaller threat to escape with E or even attack them if they're close. There are plenty of outcomes to how this goes depending on the enemy champions, but hopefully this can help you realize the potential of this creative ability. When the grass trail starts disappearing, it will so in the order that it appeared. Basically, if you want the absolute longest duration from this ability, always stand right at the furthest edge. Use your Q grass trail to connect two brushes. Certain areas around the map have 2, sometimes 3 brushes in close proximity of each other. Utilize these spots for even more juking and deception. Adding to the safety of this ability is the potential to survive dives. If you're ever in a position where you suspect the enemy is planning to dive you, whether it's one or more enemies, then your Q brush is key to stalling and surviving. Keep a Q brush equipped and even be prepared to pick up a second brush Q if the enemies are really persistent. You have access to one brush right under your tower on both sides of the map in the mid lane. Top lane has access to one brush near tower and another one specifically towards the inner jungle. Even though your brush queue is essentially a grassy area, when connected to other brushes on the map, it won't reveal what's in those brushes until you actually walk in them. Still, as mentioned in abilities, this method is great to check brushes and threatening areas, for example the river area around the Baron and Dragon pits. Just a word of caution, you should never 100% rely on brush for safety. Whether the enemy has wards to place over walls or in other brushes, sweeping lens, AoE skill shots, or they have backup on their way, your chances of surviving become extremely limited. If there is a situation where you are most likely dead, then this becomes a great survival skill, but if you can simply W or E dash away or over a wall for safety, I would always recommend that instead of trying to stylishly force an escape in a 1v2 situation. If you press back while invisible, it will interrupt it. Before you press the back button to base, if you're near a brush, pick up the brush Q. Use it once you're in base for the movement speed, and then W forward to pick up terrain to get to lane slightly faster. Picking up brush Q before you base is also a safe option. If you were to see an enemy trying to stop your back, you could use the movement speed and invisibility to get away safely. On a final note, it's also the best effect when you need to chase or get away. By not only dashing away with W, be sure to pick up the grass element and then use the Q brush in front of you. It will provide the movement speed to catch or escape from enemies over long distances. Special mechanics with Qiyana's W. Her dashes. Let's go over important wall dashes. Since the Summoner's Rift is mostly mirrored, I'll cover one side of the map and the important areas. Some of the thin walls are easy to jump over, so I won't need to cover them all. The medium wall dashes are very consistent, so you should rarely fail them after you've practiced them a few times. These harder dashes really push the limit, and unless you're positioned at almost the exact pixel, it has a high chance of failing. The cursor is unreliable, and I would only rely on these in extreme cases where you have no other choice. Try to practice and familiarize the medium wall jumps, as they'll increase your chance to escape or chase down an enemy. Extremely unique movement. When moving around or jumping over walls, you should still be aware of which elements are nearby. For example, jumping over this wall near the river, walls and a brush, think about which element you want to obtain. In some cases, your mouse will have to rapidly move and adjust in order to not only obtain the element you want, but also move in the best direction. Qiyana has, in my opinion, one of the most unique mouse cursor movements, specifically when using W. This also includes using your W active literally on your character model when you simply want to pick up an element but don't want to reposition. Sometimes you'll have to sacrifice your first priority element when chasing an enemy, as it would require you to dash backwards to obtain it. Therefore, in order to stay close enough, you must pick up whatever element is in that direction. Unfortunately, there's no trick or secret to getting better at your movement with Qiyana, but simply practice. The most consistent method is to first focus on accuracy, making sure you perform everything slowly. Then, while maintaining accuracy, gradually increase the speed. Eventually, it will become second nature. Another mechanic to practice on Qiyana is her WQ. There'll be plenty of situations where you'll need to redirect your mouse after you W towards an element and aim the Q towards a target. Practice this small combo so it feels smooth, again maintaining accuracy. Targeting close elements. Be aware when two or more elements are close together, even if your mouse cursor is positioned almost completely on the brush for example, you may just pick up the river or wall element by accident. The only way to 100% be sure is to select normal cast and see the cursor color. However, that takes too long during important fights and clutch situations. The best tip I can give here is to select regions where your mouse cursor is pretty much at the center of the element to minimize picking up the wrong element. As you can see around this brush on bot side, I'm about 1 pixel off from all 3 elements. As mentioned in abilities, when you have an element, your W passive grants you extra auto range. This will allow you to auto attack a target over quite a few thinner walls around the map. You can still auto over walls around without an element, but these spots are very limited. Even then, without the W passive, you would have to almost be pixel perfect, otherwise you risk your character pathing all the way around. This is just a quick reminder that you should always get in as many auto attacks before you throw out your Q. Auto attacking with W passive activated will increase your damage and may be the difference between killing an enemy and having them escape. Now let's quickly cover the main areas on the map that limit your choice of elements. Basically, this is the 2 base areas on the map. This is another reason why it's important to plan ahead. You should pick up a grass or if possible a river element when you anticipate a fight in these areas. Once you're in the main base areas, especially if your team is defending, you'll only have the rock element at your disposal. Let's cover her E mechanics. Although it is probably the most simple ability, it has quite a few effects worth noting. Obviously, as already mentioned, it's great to engage and close distance on your target. It can also be used as an escape tool when you find yourself close to a single or multiple enemy champions. Since it's a fixed distance, the closer you are, the further you'll end up away from your enemy. At the same time, you can use it not only to get away from say a tanky champ, but dash closer to a squishy target. While in lane, use it on an enemy minion behind you anytime you need to escape from a gank. It covers a lot more distance than W, so you might have a better chance of surviving a gank from the enemy jungler. E wall dashes. You can use most of these E dashes both ways. Remember to use it on champions or any other targetable unit like a Heimer turret or a Malzahar Voidling or a Zyra plant if you have the chance. You can E dash blue buff directly behind the blue buff area. This is an extremely rare case where you'll be able to do this, but it's worth noting. I want to mention one of the abilities in League of Legends where you can target a champ only button. This will allow you to click your cursor to position perfectly next to minions without accidentally clicking them and thus causing them to move and ruining your chances to E-dash. Even though you will max this ability second and therefore gain quite a bit of damage from it, when you have an almost guaranteed kill and you feel the enemy has flash or some other ability to get away, you want to save your E until the very end. If you E an enemy close to a thick wall, you'll barely move, but you'll stay close to your target, allowing you to continue with auto attacks. As we mentioned before, sometimes you want the damage from E but don't want to position too far away from them. Using thick walls to shorten the distance and stick to your target is definitely worth noting. Careful around thinner walls as you might accidentally E over and allow them to escape. If you're around thinner walls, make sure to hold onto your E. If you have a ward, use it over the wall anytime you predict the enemy may flash or travel over. Once they've traveled over the wall, instantly use your E to dash over the wall. Speaking of dashing over walls, use Ignite early anytime you anticipate your enemy either flashing or using an ability over the wall. Since Ignite will give you vision of them, you can simply E over the wall towards them, which may be better than using Flash or W in some cases. Quick note, even if you don't have the auto attack option on, you will always automatically auto attack the target you have E'd. This means even if you E at close range and end up out of auto range from your target, your character will automatically move towards them if you don't press or click anything after E. While we're still on E, let's clarify the EQ combo mechanic. Once you press E and instantly Q, it will automatically aim the Q towards the E target. This can be hard to aim when you want to hit another enemy close to your target, depending on where you land. If you land behind the target, the Q will be thrown from that direction you came from. If you land just in front, it will be thrown in front of you. This means you can hit multiple enemies with EQ, but it's not as consistent as simply throwing your Q when you see enemies close together. Now I want to mention important mechanics with her ultimate. Once the shockwave activates on the walls, the range indicators can be slightly misleading. Basically, even if the enemies are slightly outside the line, they may still be stunned and damaged. If used in river or brushes, even if you miss the knockback part of the ultimate, there's still a slight chance they get stunned and damaged anywhere around the skill shot, sometimes even right behind you. Activating the stun and damage with the brush interaction is mostly irrelevant. Firstly, most brushes are around walls, so you've got a better chance using them on walls since they cover more area. Secondly, the other brushes that aren't touching the walls are located in the river, therefore making it easier to use the river interaction as it covers more area. Lastly, pushing them away and into a brush could leave you at a disadvantage if you don't have vision in the brush. Here is a list of champion ability interactions that activate the stun and damage part of your ultimate. Not only can you abuse another champion's ability, whether they're your teammate or enemy, but you can use it to connect terrain on the map. Basically, it can bridge two parts of the maps together, potentially creating even more terrain for the shockwave to wrap around. 3 element areas. Some specific areas on the map contain all 3 elements close by, meaning you can activate the stun and damage from 3 different elements.
This includes most areas in the river and some parts of the jungle when the Ocean Rift is activated. This can be incredibly useful when they don't reach the wall. The enemy will still proc the stun and damage from standing on the river or brush element. Although your ult is a great engage tool, consider using your ult defensively to peel or help your team. Simply pushing the enemies away in some instances can save you and your teammates in crucial situations. Since it works across entire walls in the jungle and almost the entire edge of the Summoner's Rift, you can impact a teamfight from quite a few screens away. Although it will be easier for the enemy to dodge, and the stun duration will be less, it may be enough to change a fight with the damage and CC even though you're far away, and buy you enough time to join the fight. Areas that don't favor her ultimate. Basically spots on the map where you have no elements to rely on. Not only will you lose damage from your ultimate, there's no chance to stun. Middle parts of the lane and in base, and heavy brush areas as mentioned before, since you may lack vision. Certain areas of the jungle require you to be careful when aiming your ultimate. For example, if you're aiming for the wall furthest away from you, even if it slightly clips a wall closer to you, it will activate the shockwave on the closer wall, not the furthest one. I mentioned in abilities that even though the initial part of your ult is a knockback, it will never send enemies over the wall. However, if there are enemies on the other side of a thin wall, they can be knocked back, sometimes out of the stun area. This is a little inconsistent, as even if they get knocked back, there's still a good chance they'll be stunned and only affects enemies that are pretty much touching the wall. Nonetheless, it's something worth noting. Although it's always best to ult a champion when they don't have the Edge of Night spell shield, the knockback will actually remove the shield and the stun and damage will still apply, since your ultimate has two parts. These are just general conditions to keep in mind when Summoner Rift changes to a different element, which is whenever two dragons have been slain. Make sure to be aware of the current environment and how you can abuse them to your advantage. The Ocean Rift. This is by far the most favorable map for Qiyana. You will now have access to more ice elements from certain puddles around the jungle, and also increase the amount of brush you can pick up. As an assassin with more spots to hide, you'll benefit from the lack of vision using sweepers or umbral glaive, allowing you to increase your chance to sneak up on vulnerable targets. Mountain Rift. You'll have new walls you can now W and E dash over, allowing for more surprise attacks and of course improving your chances to knock enemies into walls with your ultimate. Infernal Rift. This map is probably the least useful for Qiyana, as it decreases element variety and opens up large parts of the jungle. It will also get rid of a few brush patches. The monster pit areas will turn into rock elements, so keep that in mind. The Cloud Rift. There's no walls, brushes or river elements added or taken away, however there's speed buff zones. On top of your already high mobility, use those speed buffs to catch your enemy.
Prime Qiyana.
Early game laning phase. Avoid invades if possible, since your level 1 is underwhelming. If your team decides to invade or counter an invade, Q is the best for damage, especially when you hit multiple targets. If you find yourself in a bad position early, you can quickly level W for an escape, jumping away over some walls. There may be cases where you can level E to close distance and perhaps finish an enemy further away, but that would be extremely rare. Early laning as Qiyana can be a little tricky, since she's a melee champ in a lane where most matchups are against ranged champs. Your main goal is to reach level 3 safely, picking up as much CS as possible without losing too much health. Most of the times you'll have to wait until level 2 when you can level up your W before you can start to farm safely. Until then, just be patient and allow the wave to crash anywhere just outside the tower or even right under the tower. Against very heavy poke, just appear off screen so they don't get a chance to poke you. Just make sure you get experience if the minions are close to dying. Some general tips when farming as Qiyana. You want to use your Q ability, especially for cannon minions, or if you can, last hit multiple minions with a single Q. It's not a huge mana cost, and you'll have items and runes to sustain you. When the opportunity arises, try to hit both CS and the enemy when you can for efficient use of your mana. It's okay to take some damage early on, particularly if you need to walk up to auto attack a cannon minion. Before the enemy minions get low on HP, attempt to constantly move back and forth to bait dangerous abilities from the enemy. Baiting enemy abilities will be important, as it will allow you to move up to CS as well as going in for trades. Once you reach level 3, put a point in E. You'll actually have quite a bit of lane pressure at this point, and if you can pull off a full pre-6 combo, you'll have high kill pressure against most squishies. Use your Q brush whenever you want to create some pressure. It may scare the enemy off last hitting minions, keep them further away so you can safely pick up CS, or even bait certain skill shots. It also works as a gap closer with the movement speed. For example, in a safe trade, you could use the brush Q for poke. If you're able to get close, use W, then auto attack Q, then use E on a minion to back off if you want, especially if you're unsure where the enemy jungler is. This will be hard for most matchups to retaliate, as you'll be too far for them to deal any damage. Although not always possible, a good aim is to back with around 1.1k gold when you can purchase your first serrated Dirk, or even straight up mobility boots if you're looking to roam. The Dirk will give you a mini power spike where you'll have just enough damage to burst most squishies with a full combo. With some heavy AP matchups, you'll want to rush a Hex Drinker. The matchup section will have more specific info for your enemy laner. If you anticipate your jungler ganking, you want to pick up the River element. When your jungler is nearby, proceed with the EQ combo. Sometimes you'll have to use the E on a minion and then land the Q. While they are rooted and then slowed, it's up to you whether you want to continue with more damage by picking up a Rock Q, using auto attacks, then throwing the finisher Rock Q, or even using another Ice Q, helping to set up your jungler to output damage. The Ice Q is best for roaming, not only for the movement speed in the entire river, but it's one of the best ways to open up a gank by stunning the target enemy. Both top and bot are great options. In some cases, look to catch out the enemy jungler and one-shot them. They'll usually be a level or two lower than you, so at level 6 you'll have a high chance to kill them. Roaming should be considered any time you are either in a stale lane with low kill pressure. Usually this is when you're up against a safe poke mage that's constantly wave clearing, the enemy is too strong to 1v1, or perhaps they are too tanky to kill. Skirmishes with your jungler are great, especially around the river area with all the elements within close proximity. Whether you want to output as much damage as possible, or simply Ice Q to stun and Brush Q to stall for your jungler when you're being targeted, be sure to use all the tips and combos and mechanics to help you. Before you roam or enter a skirmish with your jungler, make sure to push your lane by wave clearing as much as possible. This will give you priority if your jungler decides to counter jungle. Although you'll be roaming a lot yourself, there will be instances where your laner will roam before you. When you're unable to follow your laner, or your team backs off after you spam ping them, just focus on pushing and damaging towers using your W damage auto attacks. 2 tower plates is worth about a kill in gold, and you'll be closer to opening up the map by taking the enemy mid tower. Be prepared to catch out squishy vulnerable targets who come past through river or jungle, or on their way back from top or bot. To summarize most of what I've already mentioned in common situations, if you're ahead, look to kill your laner, jungler, or push your lead by roaming. Force fights with your jungler in skirmishes whenever possible. Push minion waves in so your jungler has priority. Early fights around Dragon and Herald will favor you because of the element choices. If you're behind, safely farm by spamming Q, keeping in mind the points I mentioned earlier. Roam when you can and avoid dying to your laner anymore. Try to stay as patient as possible and be ready to set up your jungler's ganks. Try to appear off the map and out of vision even if you don't intend to roam. Applying pressure may help your other laners, as the enemy mid will be spamming missing pings, consequently forcing other enemy laners to play passive. These 2 conditions assume your team is even in gold and levels, so let's cover 2 more conditions. If you're ahead but your team is behind, being an assassin, you will need to focus on killing the enemy champion that is fed and preferably has a shutdown. Assuming your enemy laner is behind, now it's time to spread your lead to lanes that are struggling. You're dealing plenty of damage at this point, so if possible, do what you can to output damage early so your teammates can pick up some kills on low HP targets. This doesn't mean you should engage and put yourself at risk, because you're still probably worth gold in shutdown, but allow your teams, especially late game carries, to pick up some needed gold, which can give you that late game assurance. If you're behind but your team is ahead, at this point you'll lack damage, but your ultimate is still extremely useful, something which I think separates Qiyana from other AD assassins when behind. You have peel potential, so find out which of your allies has the best chance of carrying. Use your Q, Brush or Ice Q and your ultimate to keep them safe from any enemies close by. Don't be afraid to die in a fight if it means you can stall time and soak up enemy abilities, allowing your team to capitalize and deal more damage. Even if you simply throw out your Brush Q at the enemy backline and force them to stay back, this will give your carries a chance to output damage without a threat. It's not really the damage from your Q that's important here, but it's the 3.5 seconds of an invisible threat from the enemy's perspective that will make the difference. Mid game. This is Qiyana's time to shine. You usually have 2 to 3 items, which is more than enough to burst most squishies, so be ready to catch enemies out. If you've picked up your Duskblade, Youmuu's or Umbral Glaive, as well as mobility boots, then making picks with or without your team should be your focus. A single pick can really open up the game, giving your team the advantage to take objectives. This is also the time where you have amazing potential to 1v2, even 1v3, especially if you camp a brush and create an opening to ultimate combo 2 or more enemy champions. Even if you take out 2 enemies and get killed yourself, it will hopefully allow for the rest of your team to pick up objectives and farm around the map. You do plenty of consistent damage to epic monsters from your W passive and Rock Q spamming when monsters are below 50% HP, so be sure to help take those when you can. However, save your cooldowns whenever you need to turn and fight. Fights around the river, jungle and epic monster pits are great for Qiyana. Not only are champions grouped up, increasing your chance to damage and CC multiple enemies with your ultimate, there is plenty of brushes and lack of vision for mind games with your brush Q. Think of the river as the ultimate fighting arena for Qiyana, full of buffs and places to dominate. Anytime you have to force a fight, make sure it's in the river. Diving is an option if your team is ahead, especially if you can land an ultimate on multiple enemies. If you're ahead but your team is behind, Qiyana does have potential to split push, and at this point, a Sanguine Blade could be your one ticket to a comeback. Attracting 1 or more champs to come and deal with you may just open up the map, allowing your teammates to capitalize on objectives and finally win a fight on their own with a numbers advantage. Remember, you are playing assuming your team is behind at this stage, so plays like this are your best chance as it will only get harder from here on out. Look to push enemies who try to dive you or your team using your ultimate and brush Q to stall. Although it is hard to control, I would advise picking any fight you have some priority in, like making a pick in the jungle. Once the enemy team is in your base, you'll only have the rock element at your disposal. If there wasn't an opportunity to fight outside your base area, then try and pick up a river or grass element beforehand if you anticipate a fight. Qiyana really excels when the enemy lacks vision, so upgrading your trinket to Oracle Lens and buying control wards will passively create pressure for the enemies. Umbral Glaive should suffice as vision denial if you feel you need more vision with your trinket wards. I would urge you to close out the game as soon as possible when ahead on Qiyana, as your chances to one-shot champions will slowly decrease once players finish their Guardian Angel and Zhonya's Hourglass. Picking up farm in the side lanes is going to be a reliable way to stay relevant with golden levels. However, this will put a target on your head, forcing 1 or more enemy champs to deal with you. You'll have the tools to 1v1 most champs, but if you feel you can't or you're outnumbered, you may have to find a way to escape or stall for your allies to come and help. Take advantages of the areas like the alcoves, river, and jungle whenever you're looking to farm side lanes. Late game. A lot of the mid game still applies to late game with Qiyana. However, you'll be punished much harder if you decide to go all in and mess it up. In saying that, one good ultimate can change an entire teamfight and ultimately win you the game. Keep an eye on enemies who have flash or any important abilities on cooldown, as you'll have a much greater chance to wipe them out early in a fight. Try to build accordingly, keeping in mind factors like your team comp, enemy team comp, damage output, and survival items like GA, Maw, Spirit Visage, Sterak's, etc. Like most assassins, you'll have a much harder time assassinating squishy champs, as they'll be constantly be grouped and positioned behind their front line, and they'll be finished their survivability items like Zhonya's and Guardian Angel. Again, fights around Barons and Elder Dragons are great since the tight areas make it ideal to land your ultimate and the easy access to 3 elements. Qiyana has insane AD scaling on her abilities, so in terms of damage, you scale well into late game. Don't ever feel like you have to rush to make desperate plays because of scaling, unless of course the enemies are all stacking armor and you're a full AD comp. I've included some more solutions to this in the strengths and weaknesses section of this guide to help ease your decision making, especially when ranked is your priority. Teamfighting. Teamfighting as Qiyana is situational. You have burst, CC, and decent consistent damage. You won't always get the chance to stun multiple enemies with your ultimate, as smarter players will keep their distance. This makes surprising and deceiving crucial if you want to gain an advantage. Although your main priority as an assassin is to burst squishy targets, teamfighting can be a little bit tricky. This is why your brush Q will have a big impact in teamfights. Not only will it provide the invisibility and movement speed to dodge autos and abilities, it will create a huge threat, possibly stalling any enemy squishies from ever entering the fight. Stalling with brush Q is best used when you need to go in deep and you find yourself in the middle of the enemy team. pick up another Q brush for an even longer stealth time. You should also use it to stall until your other cooldowns are ready. At 40% CDR, they'll be off cooldown less than a second after your grass trail has vanished. You should be prepared about 5 seconds before a fight starts by grabbing an element that you feel is best, usually river or brush to start off fights. Mentally prepare before a fight starts and figure out your objective. Who is your main target? Check out champs who are most fed and look for shutdown gold bonuses. Are you strong enough to burst? Maybe you just want to stall and create threat while you're in Q brush. Are they positioned near elements for a big stun ult? Thinking a few steps ahead is important, as once you go in, you'll be a squishy champ in a vulnerable position. Without a plan, you'll usually find yourself in the middle of a team without any escapes. Qiyana has an amazing engage with her ultimate, but that requires you to have the jump on the enemy, usually catching them off guard or in a tight position they're forced into. If you're the only main engage on your team, then by all means go for a flash ultimate play so your team has a reason to follow up. If you have another engage on your team, then I would recommend being patient with your ultimate by either waiting until your teammate has engaged or the enemies are forced in a favorable position for you. Once enemies let their guard down and commit further, it will open up opportunities for you to land a far more devastating ultimate. As mentioned before, peeling is another great plan you should consider anytime you need to protect yourself or your carries. Ultimately, it will take plenty of experience and practice to consistently come out ahead in teamfight situations when it comes to playing a champ like Qiyana.
I'm extremely good at everything.
Whether you're looking to learn an AD mid to complete your champ pool, or you're ready to become a full-time Qiyana main, or maybe you're just unsure and want to test and have fun in normal games, let's go over reasons why you should play Qiyana. We'll cover strengths and weaknesses, and I'll mention tips to combat those weaknesses. After we've covered that, I want to mention situation when it's best to pick Qiyana, focused on climbing and ranked games, followed by suggestions when first trying to learn Qiyana. First, let's cover strengths and reasons why you should play Qiyana over other champions. Mobility. With 2 dash abilities, W and E, Qiyana can be extremely hard to catch. Additionally, she has great chase potential using brush Q for even more movement speed. Unless the enemies have some hard click target CC, she can pretty much juke most skill shots, use this mobility to pounce on vulnerable squishies, or create game-changing plays through walls around the map. On top of that, she has out of combat movement speed with her W passive whenever she's next to elements, allowing her to quickly cover distances. High damage. With just a serrated Dirk at level 6, Qiyana can literally one-shot most squishies mid with a full optimal combo. She has insane AD scaling on her abilities, so finishing just one completed item equals an instant power spike. She even has fairly good consistent damage with auto attacks while your W passive is up. When you've obtained around 30% or more CDR, you'll be able to spam all your non-ultimate abilities every 3 to 4 seconds. Snowball potential. With the 2 strengths just mentioned, picking up 1 or 2 kills, then spreading your lead around the map through your mobility will allow you to take the game into your own hands. Even standing under towers, enemies aren't safe as Qiyana can force dives and chain CC her targets. Game-changing ultimate. Even when behind, her ultimate can win a teamfight. With other AD assassins, falling behind means almost no impact in teamfights. Outplay potential. When you have so much mobility coupled with an invisibility effect on your brush Q, there are endless ways to juke, bait and deceive your enemies. This means that 1v2s, even 1v3s are possible on Qiyana, assuming you land your skill shots and deal optimal damage with the combos and mechanics mentioned in this guide. Solid AD pick. Most mid lane mains can play a handful of AP champs, but usually lack a reliable AD champ. Having an AD pick as a mid laner will balance and complete most players' champion pools. She deals plenty of single target and AoE damage, so your team can solely rely on you if you're ever in that scenario where you're the only AD on your team. Finally, she's an incredibly interesting and unique champ to play. Her satisfying combos feel extremely rewarding when you execute them perfectly. Playing mind games with her brush Q never gets boring. Running around the map with mob boots and all those speed buffs allow you to be anywhere in no time. Even when you're playing those almost lost games, you'll find yourself thinking of ways to use elements to your advantage and go for that game-changing ultimate flash combo. Now let's go over weaknesses and I'll suggest some solutions to counter them. Skill shots. Her Q has quite a thin hitbox. Although you can guarantee landing Q with an EQ combo, you'll have to rely on landing long range Qs if you want to consistently win lane and just fights in general. There's no real secret with skill shots, but practicing the simple combos is a solid way to increase your speed and accuracy. Mobile champs will be challenging, so I suggest relying on your Ice Q and ultimate to start your combos. Lastly, her ultimate can be a game changer, but it's also easily avoidable if the enemies are spread out and players are ready. Again, practicing combos, especially your Alt E or Alt Flash combos, is essential to landing this ability, as enemies will have little to no time to react. I highly suggest using the practice mode until it feels smooth, as you can refresh the ultimate cooldown on command. Weak early levels. This early part of the game can actually lead to more weaknesses. From level 1, invades aren't exactly in your favor. You should try to be the first champion out to guard entrances and spam ping anytime you see enemies trying to invade. Try not to level any abilities during the first minute, as you might have to quickly put a point in W if you need to dash to get away. Your first 2 levels don't just affect your lane, but also your jungler. When you have 2 to 3 waves under your tower, it's almost impossible to help your jungler anytime they get invaded or fight for early crabs. I've included tips for champ select at the end of this section to avoid this situation altogether. But if that's not an option, then place a ward early on whichever side you think the enemy jungler will invade from. Sure, you might sacrifice some vision later on for yourself, but most of the time you'll be pushed in close to your tower anyway. With that extra vision, your jungler can have time to assess the situation, giving them an option to farm another part of their jungle or gank on the opposite side of the map. Spam ping your jungler to let them know you aren't capable of fighting when you have around 2 waves under your tower. Sometimes, if you have less than 2 or 3 CS, it might actually be beneficial to sacrifice those to help your jungler and team in general. Even when you do get to level 3, some matchups will still force you on the tower. Check out the matchup section for specific champion tips. Hard to first pick. Full AD comps, counter picks, hard matchups, 3 or more enemy tanks are just a few problems that may arise when you first pick Qiyana. I've added a specific part at the end of this section to deal with champ select and pre-game conditions, as it may end up affecting the experience for you and your team. Reliant on elements. In the mechanics section, we looked at areas that lack elements, restricting your Q choices and making your ultimate almost useless. This is why it's important to always plan ahead on Qiyana, staying one step ahead by picking up elements beforehand. Your W has a 7-second cooldown at 0% CDR, so this is a generally good time to set up for a play. Check the W tips in the mechanics section for plenty of ways to have the edge on your opponent. Hard to master. Qiyana isn't exactly a difficult champ in terms of high speed mechanics, but you must perform combos fast and accurately, as she cannot afford to miss abilities. Missing a single Q may just be the difference between you securing a kill and the enemy surviving and then returning the damage to finish you off. Okay, so we mentioned a few problems earlier on. If you're simply trying to improve at Qiyana, try to play her every game, regardless of the team comp, matchup, or what your team says. As long as you aren't toxic and play every game to the end, there's nothing wrong with it. Even pros will specifically play games in ranked to test or sharpen their mechanics before a pro game. Your mentality should be focused on improving and testing your limits. It might be good to practice in normals, flex queue, or even some bot games at first. Watching your own replays is also highly recommended, as you'll quickly realize in those moments where you thought there was nothing you could do, perhaps if you picked up a different element, it would actually turn the fight around. You don't have to watch the entire replay, just pick important moments where you have died or even get a kill, but realize you could have probably gotten more. When you are ready to focus on climbing with Qiyana, I recommend you have an AP champ ready for those team comps that are full AD, or simply dodge. Dodging once a day is usually fine, and it will only result in a 3 LP loss and around the 5-minute queue timer. Now let's quickly mention champion select tips, pre-game condition, basically when is it ideal to pick Qiyana. A good condition is to have at least one AP carry on your team. You can still pick Qiyana when you first pick if you see that one or more of your teammates have hovered an AP heavy carry champ. Not too many enemy tanks. If you're dealing with 3 or more tanks, Qiyana becomes a suboptimal pick, as you'll struggle to effectively do your main job, which is to burst and assassinate. You have strong early game champs. You should mostly look out for your team's jungler who can handle their own during early game, including picks like Lee Sin, Elise, and Asheko. However, if the enemy team has weak early game junglers, this won't be a problem. If all of these conditions are against you before it's your turn to pick, I'd advise you to pick an AP champ from your champ pool, or worst case, dodge. I've made quite a few guides on AP mids, so be sure to check them out if you're looking for an AP champ to play. Just to summarize everything, if you're purely after improving and don't mind making sacrifices, then by all means play every game as Qiyana. Just hover your champ early to let your team know, and there's more chance that there won't be a full AD comp. I honestly think by purposely putting yourself into tough situations, it will help you become a better player in the long term, despite taking a few steps back in the short term. However, if you're after LP and want to climb with the best success rate, then only pick Qiyana when the opportunity arises.
Know your place!
Matchups can be a little subjective since some players find some champions harder than others. Perhaps they have played as and against a certain champion and therefore are confident in knowing when to go in and when to play safe. I will do my best to stay as neutral as possible, assuming all skill levels are equal and focusing mostly on the champion's kit. I'll be listing champs into easy, medium and hard. Easy matchups won't include too much information as they cause very few problems, allow you to safely farm, and are generally low kill threats. Medium matchups are usually skill based. You can't just rush into trade unless you have a safe window to do so. Dodging and landing skill shots will most likely determine the winner. Hard matchups usually involve champions that counter most of your strengths. These factors include, but are not limited to, tankiness, high mobility, high sustain, reliable hard CC, strong wave clear, and high burst. Solutions will include strategies to play against the specific champion, different rune suggestions, specific item buys, abilities that threaten your survival, and windows when it's best for you to trade and even go for an all-in. Remember, there are factors that I won't cover, like your ally or enemy jungler's pressure, going up against smurfs, very unconventional picks, and enemy roams from either top or bottom. I will be prioritizing newer players in this section, since many of them simply don't know what champions are capable of, but experienced players can still learn a handful of valuable tips. By quickly covering the important enemy abilities, a newer player doesn't need to spend time playing every champion in the game to understand what to watch out for. I will be mainly discussing the champion through laning phase, including pre-6, level 6, and just a little bit after level 6. I will be talking a little bit faster in this section since there are quite a few champions to mention. Easy matchups. Before I get started, a good suggestion for your second page is Precision, Triumph with Coup de Grace. These runes are slightly more aggressive as you won't need to rely on the sustain from Inspiration. Longsword and a refillable potion is a very gold efficient start when you're confident you won't need the sustain from Corrupting Potion. Anivia. Her only threat is her Q, which is a slow moving skill shot that stuns and she'll follow up with bonus damage from her E and auto attacks. You can easily dodge this with sidesteps or using your dashes. Go for hard trades when you hit level 3. She has an egg passive which revives her once she loses all HP. Let your jungler know and keep a timer when it's down. It's a 4-minute cooldown. Watch out for any type of egg baits, perhaps under a tower or stalling for her jungler. Her W wall can be easily dashed over. It acts just like normal terrain, so when you have the chance, be ready to use your ultimate on her wall. At level 6, she will likely just perma push the lane with her large AoE ultimate, which is then best to roam if she chooses to play safe. Optimal items could include a Tiamat to counter push and Merc Treads if the enemy are AP or CC heavy. Annie. Look for hard trades anytime her stun is down. Her stun is displayed beneath her health bar at 4 stacks, but watch out at 3 stacks as she can quickly use an ability to proc it and then follow up with a stun. She can burst you at level 6 with a full combo and ignite. If you kill her and Tibbers starts attacking you, you can use Q Brush for Invis to lose aggro. But it will still deal some AoE damage. Hex Drinker, Merc Treads or Edge of Night are some options to survive burst. Brand. His W AoE skill shot is his main poke damage, so when possible, use your W or E to dodge it. His Q skill shot is his main threat, which stuns you when you are already ablaze from his passive. When his Q is down, go for hard trades and all in. After 6, don't all in him next to minions, as his ultimate will bounce up to 3 times onto you. Merc Treads are optional if there is more AP and CC threats. Kassadin. Pre-6 you can go for hard trades anytime he steps up for CS and you have your abilities off cooldown. His Q is his only safe poke tool. He gains an AP shield from his Q, which means it's useless against you.
If he uses Q on you, his W is an empowered auto, so he'll use it anytime you get close. His E is an AoE in front of him, but it's only active once he reaches 6 stacks, which he gains from anyone using abilities around him, and you can check how many stacks he has on his items by looking at the information tooltip. Once he's level 6, you need to respect him, but you can still kill him with a full combo. Katarina. Her Q is her only form of poke. Avoid standing next to daggers, as this is where most of her damage comes from. Your EQ is important for guaranteed damage, as her constant E dashing on daggers makes it hard to hit skill shots. Although this may be an easy lane, her threat comes from constant roaming. Make sure to ward and ping teammates when you predict her ganking. You can cancel her ultimate with your ultimate. Rush Tiamat and Mobius to wave clear, either forcing her to stay mid to clear and matching her roams. Lux. Dodge her Q skill shot either by sidestepping or using your dashes. Anytime her Q is down, you are safe to hard trade. Watch out anytime she's low HP, as she might try to bait you with her W shield and if she takes barrier. She can choose to play really safe with her E wave clear. Consider taking Tiamat to counter push waves, then roam. Merc trades are a pretty solid choice if they have a heavy CC team. Malphite. Pre-6 he's not a kill threat, but he will spam Q poke and it will add up. Taking biscuits and tonic for HP regen will counter his poke and he'll go Try to consistently poke him while his passive shield is down. It will regen every 10 seconds. You can hard trade anytime he wastes his abilities or his Otherwise, he'll likely outtrade you if he has everything up with his armor stacking W passive auto attacks and his E ground stomp. Consider Tiamat and Moby Boots Rush. Push waves and roam. Respect his level 6 as he can one-shot you if he builds full AP. Malzahar. Anytime he E-space aids the minions, you can go for hard trade. When going for a trade, E in to remove his passive shield if it's not already down from your Q poke. Make sure to kill his minions to slow down his push. Although he's not a massive threat at level 6, you still have to respect his flash R suppress, as it may be followed up by a jungler, or he can kill you with a full combo if you're around 90% HP and below. Consider buying Tiamat to push and roam. QSS may be purchased after laning phase if you anticipate he'll ult you in a teamfight and you're a main carry. Ryze. Stay behind minions from his Q poke and stay away from minions if he tags you with his E. He will likely push in the wave constantly, but he goes pretty early. Focus on farming safely until level 3 when you can go for harder trades anytime he wastes abilities. Consider Merc treads if the enemy team has heavy CC. Grass Q is pretty useful against him, as 2 out of his 3 abilities need to target you. Look to roam once he starts perma pushing waves. After 6 he can actually match your roams easily with his ultimate. You can cancel his ult with Ice Q or your ultimate. Twisted Fate. His only real threat is his W yellow stun card, which can be followed up by his Q and auto attacks for a hard trade. Anytime he uses his W, you can go in for a hard trade. After 6, try to keep a ward behind the river walls so you can see which lane he uses his TP ultimate. Look to Ice Q or ultimate stun to cancel his ult if possible. Consider Tiamat to push him in so he can't freely roam. Perhaps take Cleanse as a summoner if they have a high threat jungler. His ultimate will reveal you while you're in Grass Q stealth and he can target you. Vel'Koz. Vel'Koz is an all skill shot champion, so sidestepping and dashing is the key to winning. Stay behind or beside minions to block his Q, which he shoots 2 skill shots perpendicular. Save your W or E dash to dodge his E knockup. Anytime his E is down, you can go for hard trades if he lets you get close. Avoid getting 3 stacks from his passive as it deals bonus true damage. Just stay back to remove the stacks anytime you have 1 or 2 for 7 seconds. Maintain control in rivers so he won't be able to lean his lane, otherwise punish him if he does. You can interrupt his ultimate with yours. He remains still while channeling his R laser beam.
Medium matchups. Unlike the easy matchups, you'll most likely want to take inspiration for your second page, with Biscuit Delivery and Time Warp Tonic as your 2 minor rooms for the sustain in lane. These matchups are heavily skill based, and some may even be easy or hard depending on your experience and how skilled the enemy is. If at any time you feel like you can't lane or are being pushed in, I would recommend rushing Tiamat to counter push and look for roams. Poke combos are great before you decide to hard trade in many of these matchups. Ahri. Pre-6, her main threat is her E-Charm, which will be followed up by her Q-Orb and W3 Fireballs for a short hard trade. Don't just dash onto her, as her charm will interrupt your dashes, so only look to trade anytime charm is down. Try to bait it out or dodge it with your dashes anytime you anticipate it. After 6 she's going to be hard to lock down, so your best bet is to catch her out in Fog of War around walls, in the jungle, and river with a full combo. Focus on combos without auto attacks when she has ult, dishing out as much damage before she dashes away. A good Ahri will always keep her distance and will make it very hard for you to walk up and get a free E, so this can turn into a hard lane. Merc Treads and Hexdrinker are some options for items. Akali. She will win trades against you with her Q and auto procs. You'll need to bait out her Q and W Shroud and back off while she's stealthed. Once her W Shroud is down and she's low on energy, that's your window to go in for a hard trade. Stay behind minions to avoid her E. At level 6 she can dash towards you, but she needs to target you. Stay close to areas to ult and have Ice Element ready for an Ice Q into ult combo to chain CC her anytime she engages. Hexdrinker or Merc Treads are great defensive options. Aurelion Sol. Most Aurelion Sols perma push with W orbs. Care for his slow Q skill shot which stuns and he will follow up with more damage. Use dashes to dodge his Q. After level 3 you can look for hard trades by staying really close to him, avoiding getting hit by his orbs. His main threat comes from roams using his fast travelling E. Try to ward behind river walls and some control wards in river brushes. Ping teammates anytime he's missing and you predict which lane he's ganking. Tiamat and Mobies are a good way to push and match his roams. He can probably kill you with his ultimate combo from around 80% HP, so respect his damage, but try to punish him in the river when you can. Azir. Just respect his range early laning with his W soldiers and Q poke. Safely farm until level 3. When he uses Q, it's safe to hard trade, as he'll do almost no damage if you stay off his soldiers. At level 6 he can kite and peel you off with his wall, but you can use your ultimate on his wall to activate your shockwave. Just don't get baited, as he may try to sweep you under his tower. He can always decide to play very safe, in which case you can rush Tiamat and Mobies and look for roams. Mercs are optional if the enemy team is AP or CC heavy. Corki. Respect his early Q poke and consistent damage from autos and his E Gatling gun. At level 3 you can look for a hard trade, just save one dash, preferably your E dash, to gap close once he's used his W dash. His ult is just long range poke. His third ult shot is a big one, so avoid it if possible, which deals extra damage and increased explosion range, so don't stay too close to minions. His massive gap closing knockback, AoE damage and slow passive is what makes him a true threat, and you should almost never fight him while he has it. He must use this package within 1 minute or he loses it. Be aware that he'll likely look for roams, so ping your teammates whenever he picks it up from base every 8 minutes. Echo. You win most trades after level 2. You can reliably dodge his slow moving Q. You can look for hard trades after 3. Avoid allowing him to proc his passive on you, which activates after he lands 3 auto attacks or abilities. Be careful when he moves out of sight, as he's likely charging his W, AoE stun and slow field. After 6 you have a high chance to kill him, especially if you avoid his telegraphed ult damage AoE, basically staying away from his shadow clone unless you can tank the damage, and even ignite him before he uses it to reduce the healing. Merc Treads or Hexdrinker are great if he gets ahead and there are more AP threats. Aurelia. Play safe before level 3, as Aurelia outtrades you in extended auto attack trades. After level 3 she only wins trades if she lands her E, which is telegraphed. Don't go for long trades when she has close to or 5 stacks, as she'll gain attack speed per stack and extra damage on her autos at full 5 stacks. Save your dash to dodge her E. You then want to save most of your damage while she has her W damage reduction activated. Once her W and E is down, you can safely win the trade. She can still all in you at level 6, and you may need to use your ult defensively to peel her off. Brush Q for safety, as she'll need to target you for most of her auto attack and Q damage. Tab Eyes for a defensive option, Tiamat for wave clear then roam. Jace. Respect his poke and trade damage before level 3 by playing safe. If he ever uses his E plus empowered Q and misses, it's your chance to go in for a hard trade. You can use Brush Q for safety, and he will have a hard time dealing damage from his Q and E knockback. Care anytime you are around 70 to 80% HP, as he can all-in burst combo you if he hits everything. You have kill potential at level 6 anytime you can ult stun and combo him. He doesn't have an ult. Instead, after he transforms, his basic attacks reduce more armor and magic resist, making his level 6 rather lackluster. LeBlanc. Play safe before level 3.
Avoid getting hit by her W dash whenever she Q marks you, as she'll follow up with an E chain, which you should use your dashes to avoid being hit, or if the initial chain hits, use dashes to get out of her tether range. She's extremely slippery and is one of the few champs who can dodge your EQ combo when she recasts her W dash. However, you can always try to predict she'll return by throwing it towards the W pad on the floor. At level 6, she can use one of her 3 abilities twice in a row, which means she can burst you with a full combo. One strategy is to rush Tiamat to push her in, then roam. She struggles to push waves unless she's using her high damaging ability W, in which case you can now safely trade with her. Hex Drinker and Merc Treads are defensive options. Lucian, play safe until level 3. Try not to align with minions and Lucian or he'll Q poke you from range. Keep your distance as he can dash in auto range and then pre-6 combo you for a huge chunk of damage. Brush Q for safety when you can. After level 3, anytime he uses Q, you can go for a hard trade, just make sure you save your E or W after he dashes to stay close. You will heavily outtrade him when you pick up your first Dirk. Try to poke combo when possible before going in for trades. At level 6 he can kill you with a full channel ult, but you are able to cancel his ultimate with yours. Anytime you get the jump on him, whether it's around the wall or a river, you can one-shot him. Ninja Tabis are a great defensive option. Nocturne. He has good wave clear with his Q AoE skill shot, so he'll push you in early. Don't trade on top of his Q Dusk Trail as he'll get extra AD. If you stand directly behind minions, he'll usually try hitting minions and you at the same time, so standing on either side will force him to use Q on you if he wants to poke you, in which case he'll sacrifice wave clear. He wins hard trades, so stick to quick and poke combos. Dash out of his E fear tether using E on a minion away from him. W may not be enough to escape his tether range, but you can use Q brush to keep yourself safe while you are feared. He will be rushing for level 6 when he is able to gank lanes and even engage on you with his long range ultimate. He has potential to one-shot you with a full combo, so Ninja Tabis might be a solid safe option. Ping teammates anytime he is missing. Tiamat is a great way to counter his wave clear. Orianna. Play safe before level 3. Avoid being too close for her Q ball poke as she'll follow up with her AoE slow field with W and her empowered auto attacks from her passive. After level 3, it's best to bait her QW poke, then go in for a trade anytime she wastes it. She can choose to play very safe, making it very hard to get a kill. After level 6, watch out for her E shield and her ult pullback bait under tower. Plenty of Oriannas take barrier, so take that into account. Look to roam if the lane becomes stale, as she can perma push waves with her wave clear. Pyke. Use your W and E dashes to dodge his Q spearhook and E dash stun. Anytime he wastes any of these, you will outtrade him. His wave clear is bad unless he purchases a Tiamat early. He is pretty tough to engage on while he has his E dash stun up. His main threat comes from his W invis roaming, which he gains significant movement speed, so make sure to spam ping anytime you predict which lane or when he disappears off map. His passive will replenish the grey part of his HP bar whenever he's out of vision, so don't think he's low HP just because you recently traded or poke comboed him. He has high kill potential at level 6 when his ultimate will execute you whenever you're around 30% HP early game. Ninja Tabis might be a solid purchase not only for the armor but the movement speed, especially if the enemy team has more AD threats. Syndra. Play safe until level 3. Avoid taking her Q poke damage as she can spam it every 4 seconds at 0 cooldown. Her E long range stun is her main threat. She'll use it for a big trade to set up for her jungler and even peel you off. Therefore, you should look to hard trade anytime it's down. At level 6, she can burst you at around 80% HP and if she's stacked her Q balls. You can full combo her anytime you catch her out around walls or the river. Merc Treads are a great option to reduce damage, CC, and provide movement speed to dodge her skill shots. Hex Drinker is another defensive option. Talon. Respect his passive damage, which activates at 3 stacks whenever he hits Q and 2 parts of his W. He has a huge kill threat at level 2, even if you have about 80% HP. After level 3, try to at least dodge the second part of his W by W dashing away or E dash behind him when you go in for hard trades. Try to poke him down from safe range before committing to an all-in. At level 6, you both have kill potential, but you'll either need to poke him down or get the jump on him. He becomes more of a threat to your team with his E wall jumping roams. Ward around river and walls. Spam ping your team when he's out of vision. Tiamat and Mobius to counter push waves and match his roams. Viktor, play safe until level 3, stay back from his QE poke. He'll likely go if he spams this early, so just sustain and look to trade when you're level 3. When going for a trade, save dash to avoid being stunned in his W field. Depending on how he places it, you might need to just back out or keep on the attack. He'll hit his first power spike when he upgrades his E to extra damage, which will cost him around 1150 gold. At level 6 he has kill pressure with his burst. Tiamat to counter push his wave clear. Hexdrinker is a decent buy. Vladimir, play safe until level 3, avoid taking Q and E poke damage. Especially avoid his empowered Q when the bar under his HP bar is full and turns red. It's best to wait a few seconds until he either uses it on minions or it runs out. After level 3, once his Q is down, you can look for a hard trade. Just hold your Qs until he is out of his W pool. At level 6 he becomes very hard to kill with his healing and W for safety. It's best to buy a Tiamat and Moby Rush to push and roam, making plays around the map. Executioners is a great early option buy to reduce a lot of his healing. Xerath, he is all skill shots, so dodging is essential to winning lane. Use dashes to avoid his Q beam and his W circle AoE slow skill shots, especially in the center as it does extra damage. Stay behind minions so he can't get an E stun on you. Anytime his E is down is a good window to look for a hard trade. His passive allows him to gain mana from his next auto attack and he gets extra mana when he attacks you. Anytime he's he may be tempted to auto attack you, so it might be useful to use this as a chance to E dash onto him. At 6 his poke potential depends on his accuracy, so be sure to stay healthy. Most Xeraths play extremely safe, so your best bet is to roam or catch him around river. Merc Treads is a defensive option. Yasuo, he wins extended trades, so keep trades short as possible. Try to bait out his long CD W win wall before a trade by poking him with Q, otherwise he can potentially negate most of your damage. Don't trade while he has his Q tornado ready. Try to poke him to get rid of his passive shield before a trade. At level 6, avoid getting knocked up with his Q tornado or he'll ult combo you. Respect the jungler if they have a knock up, as he'll most likely use that to initiate his ultimate. Tiamat is a good option to push and then look to roam. For clarity, he can block your Q and ultimate with his win wall. Yone, his Q is a short range skill shot, but after he procs this twice either on you or minions, his third Q becomes a long range dash and knock up, displayed by a tornado around him, so play safe and back off. His W AoE shields him. E dash is his main gap closer outside of his third Q, and procs extra damage when he returns, so he will win trades during this window. E has a long cooldown, around 20 seconds early game, so look for trades while it's down. E is telegraphed and will always return to the shadow location, therefore you can use this as a chance to land your Q and ult skill shots. He becomes a massive threat when he hits level 6. Once he ults, he will always appear behind you, so use this as a chance to land your Q and ult skill shots when possible. He's pretty squishy and lacks a reliable escape, so look to catch him out and full combo him when you can, probably in areas around the river. Ninja Tabies are a solid defensive option, especially if more AD threats. Here's a cool tip that has no real use, but looks like you're moonwalking. Press ult, then instantly W, and Qiyana will be moonwalking. It will stay like this until Qiyana uses Q or ult. As long as you stay next to the element, you'll be moonwalking. Sometimes you'll keep moonwalking regardless. Zed, stand behind minions to avoid taking most of the damage from his Q shurikens. At level 3, you need to respect his W shadow combo where he will E slash to slow you and follow up with Q and auto attacks after he has dashed to his shadow. Once his shadow is down, you can look to hard trade. He can dodge your EQ by returning to his shadow. At level 6, if he ever ults you first, remember that he will always appear behind you, so you can time your ultimate for a guaranteed knockup and follow up with a combo. Whoever gets the first kill or 2 will likely hard snowball this lane. Ziggs, he is all skill shots, so dodging is key. His Q bouncing bomb is easier for him to hit when you're next to minions because of the splash damage. He can peel you off with his W satchel jump and create an AoE area with E, making it hard to stay on him. Look to trade anytime these are down. At level 6, he will most likely perma push waves, so it might be best to just push waves and roam. His ult does more damage in the center, so try to at least avoid that main damage. He can't really follow your roams, and if he tries, look to kill him in the river and around the jungle. Zoe. Her only main threat is her E sleep CC. Once you're hit, she will follow up with a charged Q poke and empowered autos, which will chunk you for around 50% HP. Stay away from walls, especially if you don't have vision of her, as walls extend the range of her E. She might even be charging up for a long range Q, as it does more damage the longer it travels. Keep an eye on her W spell, which will be displayed next to her HP bar. Careful when using your summoner spells, as she may use them against you. Once her E is down, you can safely hard trade. At level 6, she has a dash for gap closing, however, she will return to the initial portal, which means you can get a guaranteed Q and even prepare to all in her if you're in a good position to ult stun her. She may choose to play really safe, in which case you should look to roam. Hard matchups. It's important to mention in tougher matchups that whenever you are slightly behind, or perhaps even in CS, as long as you don't give away kills, you have essentially won the matchup. Basically, surviving lane is top priority. If possible, you'll want to make plays by roaming. At the very least, you should just make sure you're farmed up so you're strong for mid game. Although some players may find these matchups medium or possibly even easy, these champions have everything in their kit to contain you and make your laning extremely difficult. Cassio. Avoid her small AoE poison or she will follow up with her E Twin Fang spam. If she spams this early in lane, she will go and you should out-sustain her. Her main threat comes from her W Miasma, where a large poison field will slow and stop you from using any dash abilities, aka being grounded. After level 3, one of the only times to safely trade is when her W Miasma is down and using your dashes to engage and dodge her Q. You can also trade when she's around 30% mana and below, as she can't spam E early without going You can potentially dash over her W Miasma with E if you're just outside its range and Cass is on the other side. Her level 6 is a huge threat with her large AoE stun ult, so be ready to face away when you anticipate it. You should look to burst her if you can get the jump on her, just avoid being stunned or she'll counter combo you. Merc treads are a defensive option. Diana. She can out-trade you with her W shield as it will soak up most of your combo. You'll have to bait her W out if you want to win trades. Her Q poke will chunk you eventually, so avoid being hit as much as possible. If you are hit, stay back or she'll be able to E-dash twice to you. Winning lane will be difficult unless jungler's intervention. Diana lacks escape, so try to set up the wave next to your tower and be ready to Ice Q root her to set up for your jungler. At level 6 she can and will go for a full combo anytime you get hit by her Q or she has a jungler nearby. Her ult can interrupt your dashes. You may need to peel her with your ult for safety. Look to Tiamat wave clear and roam when you can. Merc treads and Hexdrinker are some defensive options, mostly to counter her burst. Fizz. Aim to beat him to level 2 and then go for a hard trade. At level 3 it will be hard, but you can dash and avoid his E-jump damage, but he can still out-trade you with his empowered autos. The best bet is to poke combo to chunk him, so he needs to think twice before he can Q dash towards you. If he ever does engage, just keep trades short as possible and back off. You can Q brush to avoid most of his Q and W auto damage. At level 6, if he ever hits his ult shark, he can one-shot you, so be ready to dodge or stay back. Hexdrinker can counter this burst. Roaming is a good option after 6, but respect his roaming potential as well. Galio. Although his W passive MR shield blocks AP, his kit still counters you. Unless he wastes his W taunt and his E dash knockup, you will be chain CC'd and have a hard time getting off your combo before he outtrades you with his burst. You can try to dash away while he is channeling his W taunt area. Your best bet is to poke him and hope for a gank. Even at level 6, he can counter your roaming using his ult to jump to a teammate and knock anyone up in his AoE. If you ever catch him channeling the first second of his ultimate, you can Ice Q or ult to interrupt it. Merc treads are a defensive option. If the Galio is a smart player, this game will be a tough challenge. One of the few times I would recommend dodging if elo is your priority. Remember to check my champ select section to see if there are other factors worth dodging. Lissandra. Stay far behind minions or to the side of them to avoid her Q poke splash damage. Her W root counters you anytime you get close and she can just E away. You can interrupt her E with your Ice Q, but that depends on the Liss timing her E. When her E is down, you can go for a hard trade. Aftershock Liss is much tankier than Electrocute Liss. She's not much of a threat on her own, but she has amazing CC chain setup for her jungler, and this gets amplified when she's level 6 with her stun ult. Best to rush Tiamat and roam. Merc treads are a great defensive option. Neeko. Play safe and watch out when she aligns with minions. Her E root increases in speed, width and root duration when it passes through minions, and she'll follow up with 2 procs from her Q and an empowered auto attack, chunking you for quite a bit. When her E is down, this is the best time to go for a hard trade. However, she will W clone for safety and you must predict which is the real Neeko before you output your damage. The fake Neeko only moves in one direction unless it's pathing around the wall. The clone cannot auto or use abilities. A smart Neeko player will make it hard to target. Stick to poke combos most of the lane. Level 6 becomes almost impossible to engage on her as she can use her ultimate shield, damage and CC for safety and then counter combo you. Best chance is to catch her off guard in the river or around walls and full combo her. Merc Treads and Hexdrinker might help, best to roam if possible. Pantheon. Play very safe and out of his W stun range, which he will follow up with his combo. He will outtrade you if you get close with his quick Q cast spear and negate your damage with his E block. Especially watch out when he has full 5 stacks under his health bar as it will amplify his Q, W and E damage and effects. You can interrupt his charged Q with your Ice Q, but it's not reliable. Brush Q can be a safety tool so he can't target his W stun. Stick to poke combos. Even at level 6, he can counter your roams with his Starfall ultimate. If you catch him channeling his ult for the first 2 seconds, you can interrupt it with Ice Q and ultimate. Anytime he Starfalls on you, it will be telegraphed on the floor, which means you can actually time it with your abilities and perhaps your ultimate. Roam before level 6 is your best bet to get a lead. Ping your teammates at when he's level 6 and try to ward around river walls. Rumble. His W shield will block most of your trade and poke potential. Additionally, he is manaless, so he'll always be able to use it. When he is above 50% energy, his Q flames and E harpoons increase in damage, so avoid trading during this window. Best bet is to bait him to overheat at 100% energy, then go for hard trade and back off. At level 6, his large AoE field will damage and slow you, which he could use from long range to engage or set up for his jungler, so play extra passive. Merc Treads and Hexdrinker are defensive options. Roaming is an option, but he'll also look to roam himself since he has great wave clear and his ultimate is a great engage tool for ganks. Sylas. A good early buy is Executioners to counter his W healing. His Q has 2 parts and you should dash away to at least avoid the second high damage part. His E dash and then chain pull is his main gap closer, so avoid it at all costs or he'll follow up with his combo. Brush Q can be a safe way to avoid his W target spell. He lacks escape apart from his small E dash over walls, so try to hold your wave close to your tower and be ready to set up for your jungler. At level 6 he can copy your ult and hold it for 1 minute and 30 seconds. Even though your ult doesn't scale with AP, the converted AD damage, base stats and the stun he gets will make him a huge kill threat. The only good news is that once he steals your ultimate, it will be on cooldown for up to 4 minutes in the early game. Veigar. Although he's a squishy immobile champ, his E cage, when used properly, will make it almost impossible to reliably trade. Go for hard trades when his cage is down. Try to bait it out when you can. Avoid taking Q poke damage as he will gain AP. His W is easy to dodge even if you're inside his cage. Anytime you are stunned, he will chunk you, and watch out when he uses it aggressively to set up for a jungler. At level 6 his kill threat is high, as anytime you are around 30% HP, he will execute you with his ultimate. Merc Treads are an option, but you could just also Tiamat and Mobius to shove waves and roam. If he decides to build defensively, your kill threat is extremely low as you won't be able to full combo him.
This ultimate guide is mostly focused on mid Qiyana, but 99% of the information can be applied to top and jungle. I will not go into depth for the matchups in top or jungle. Top lane. Use the Electrocute and Conqueror cheat sheets in the build section of this guide. Make sure to substitute TP for Ignite, however, Ignite is still a viable option. I recommend the Electrocute build in most games, especially since the Conqueror nerfs, where you now need 12 procs to activate the max damage and 15% heal effect. However, you can still use the items from the Conqueror cheat sheet, for example Black Cleaver and Death Stance, but just substitute the Electrocute runes. Conqueror is best played top as it favors slightly longer trades, which is more common to melee matchups. You want to abuse your brush Q as much as possible, becoming untargetable and stalling time for your cooldowns. With 3 brushes and an alcove to perform jukes, top lane is perfect for this playstyle, so it's important to practice the brush Q mechanics. Now let's go over some advantages of playing Qiyana top. You'll actually have a decent and safe laning phase against a lot of matchups, depending on how well you abuse your brush Q mechanic. The 3 brushes and the alcove make it very hard for immobile champs to catch you. First picking Qiyana mid generally means you'll run into the common problems of having a full AD team. Playing her top, usually means you won't have the same problem as mid, which is again too many ADs. As long as you have enough games under your belt, you'll be extremely useful in teamfights. Even if you're behind, you'll have a game-changing ultimate, so you'll hopefully be useful to your team. You can actually make some amazing TP plays once you have your ultimate, especially when there's fights around objectives, so constantly keep map awareness as your top priority. Skirmishes with your jungler can be advantageous for Qiyana, depending on the 3 other champs involved, and if you fight around heavy element areas like the 3 brush area in top lane, the jungle, and river. Now let's look at some cons playing Qiyana top. Your team may lack tankiness. Top is usually the lane the majority of tanks are played in, so by picking a squishy champ like Qiyana, you'll most likely want your jungler support or even your mid laner to pick at least one tank between them before you decide on a Qiyana top. Although we mentioned she has decent matchups in top, you'll also be severely punished and have a small margin of error in specific matchups. Matchups can be quite subjective however when it comes to top lane, as I've seen some Qiyana mains hate to play against champs, for example Darius, while others find him quite easy. So ultimately, it will come down to how experienced you are with Qiyana and top lane matchups. Once tanky champs start stacking armor and HP, you'll struggle to do your main job, which is to burst and assassinate, at least in your lane. However, you could still safely farm and try to be strong for mid game, where you can make plays from there. Jungle. Builds. For jungle builds, you want to take either Electrocute or Dark Harvest and replace the second summoner spell with Smite. You can replace Eyeball Collection with Zombie Ward, as it may provide more vision for you and your team. Relentless Hunter is an option over Ravenous Hunter if movement speed is a priority, since you'll be moving around the map a lot more. Start W for the attack speed and bonus damage level 1, then Q at level 2. Take Precision as your second page, Alacrity and Coup de Grace. The Alacrity attack speed will help with clearing. You'll want to start with Hunter's Talisman and Refillable Pot. Your first major item should be the completed jungle item Enchantment Warrior. Red Smite will be better for 1v1s, while Blue Smite will provide a range slow as well as damage. You can use this Blue Smite CC against highly mobile champs, allowing you or your team to follow up with skill shots and combos. After your jungle item is completed, you can choose any items from the Electrocute and Conqueror cheat sheets in the build sections of this guide. As for shards, replace the first adaptive shard with attack speed and pick up armor as the final shard. Clearing. I would suggest you have enough practice on Qiyana before attempting to play her jungle. Practice clearing a few times, focusing on dealing optimal damage while traveling to the next camp and keeping yourself healthy. Her early clear is very slow and therefore requires ganking or requires enough jungle knowledge to get ahead or simply keep up in levels. That being said, her early level 2 but mostly level 3 ganks have a high chance of securing a kill or at least forcing cooldowns like Flash. Using Q Brush to clear camps is great to avoid taking damage, regain HP and waiting for cooldowns, but you must be careful not to reset jungle camps, paying close attention to the aggro bar just underneath the camp's HP bar. Avoid using Brush Q if it's 2 or less bars, as you risk resetting the camp and ultimately wasting time. No matter what changes happen in the jungle, you'll almost always want to aim for level 3 before you gank, so look for the most route to level 3 in whatever meta you're playing in. I would almost never recommend Predator, however, since it was picked by a few times by pro players, it's worth a mention as a rare final rune choice. Remember, most of the tips and information in this guide can be applied even when you're playing Qiyana jungle. Focus on efficient clearing and work on optimizing your ganks. She'll be put behind quite severely anytime you die early or waste time in general. If you're an experienced jungler, you can choose whichever jungle route you think is best, but here are 2 common starts depending on which side your bot lane is to help with a solid level 1 leash. If you're blue side, start with red buff, then make your way to golems, then raptors where you'll hit level 3, then gank mid lane. If you're starting red side, take blue buff getting a leash from your bot lane, move towards Gromp and then wolves, after which you'll hit level 3, then gank mid. By the way, this was a really rough clear. You should have way more HP at level 3 with a good leash. In both of these clears, if ganking mid isn't an option, you can continue clearing, take crab, invade, gank bot, or even back to base depending on your specific game. you should mostly engage with an E Ice Q combo, maybe even Flash if you've got good damage or CC backup from your mid laner.
You are now part of the legend of Qiyana.
Don't be afraid to really test your limits with Qiyana. You'll have to adapt to situations, taking into account how your opponents play and what elements you have available. Simply memorizing combos won't be enough. It will take some perseverance, learning from in-game experience, and gaining that muscle memory, but I truly believe a unique champ like Qiyana will be worth the reward. Having a solid AD pick like Qiyana in your champ pool will increase your odds when climbing, especially whenever your team needs an AD mid. I know I definitely had to get out of my comfort zone when learning Qiyana. Facing some difficult matchups and struggling to keep up in CS is something I wasn't used to, considering my comfort roles and picks involved mostly ranged champions. This guide might be long, but don't get overwhelmed by all the combos and mechanics. Enjoy the process, test your limits, and come back to this video anytime you need to refresh your memory. Hey, if you've made it to this part of the video, you've either watched the entire video, which is an accomplishment on its own, or you're keen on supporting me and this channel. I really love making these videos. Even though it takes quite a while to record audio, edit gameplay footage, create custom images, and video edit everything together, it's something I really enjoy doing. Helping players improve and reach their goals in something they enjoy really gives me a sense of fulfillment. I'm really passionate about making this my full-time job, specifically the video editing, and I'm letting you guys know that I'm going to put all my time and energy to make this a reality. If you've been around for a while, you've probably noticed my videos improving over time, and I'm extremely confident I could improve them even more and upload way more too. If you'd like to support me, there's a few ways. The first, best, and easiest way requires no money, and that's simply watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting. If you want to go a little further, linking my videos to social medias and to people who may find them useful will help my videos get extra exposure. If you really want to help and have financial means to do so, there are two options I'm focusing on right now. My main priority is growing this community here on YouTube, so the first and best way to financially support me is by hitting that join button and becoming a member here on this channel, Zeus. Every country is different, but it costs on average around $5 per month. Perks and benefits to joining include having your name mentioned at the end of these videos, the ability to directly message me, and members emotes. I'm still working on emotes, and there'll be a great way to interact when I start streaming, which will be in a few months. Streaming will be a great way to connect with you guys, and I'm looking forward to that. These perks may change over time, and if you're one of the first to join, I'll be willing to listen to any suggestions you have. The second option, which will have a few monetary options, and that's Patreon. There may be specific tiers that may interest you. I'll keep it simple for now, but the first tier will be similar to becoming a member here on YouTube. I will have gold, diamond, and challenger tiers. Diamond and challenger tiers are for those who are really keen on supporting me. They'll have the same perks as gold, and they'll be recognized in my video with special mentions. Challenger tiers will be mentioned at the beginning. I can make more tiers, so if you have any ideas for reasonable perks, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Or if you're a member, you can directly message me. If these two options aren't convenient for you, but you want to help with another financial method, let me know. This is just the beginning. I'll be mainly focused on growing this community, which will include communicating with you guys daily, improving my video editing, grinding ranked solo queue, and preparing to stream in a few months. I've got way more ideas planned, but these are top priority at the moment. I really appreciate the support I've received so far, and I want to thank those who have been around the last few years, even the recent viewers and subscribers. Consistency is something I've struggled with in the past, mostly because of real life commitments. This is why I've decided to make this guide that really stood out and to show you guys that I'm 100% serious about this, so I decided to go all out in this Qiyana guide video. I'm quite amazed that I finished this, but there's still so much I can improve on. It's also the reason I waited until I completed a video like this before I went ahead and started asking for support. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching this Qiyana guide. If you've made it this far, you're literally the reason I'm able to work towards my dream. I'll see you guys in the next video.